I am Michael Damiani. I have completed Fire Emblem 3 Houses as the Golden Deer.
I am Ben Moore, and I have completed Fire Emblem 3 Houses as the Black Eagles.
I am Roger DeLuigi from RogersBase, and I have completed Fire Emblem 3 Houses as the Black Eagles as well.
Nice.
With that, spoiler mode activates
Now!
Spoiler mode, final warning, spoiler mode activated.
All right, welcome everyone to this highly anticipated episode of Spoiler Mode. We've got a lot to talk about, and this game, choices. And I think that's the question on everyone's mind besides what house do we pick, the decisions we made. And you both did Black Eagles. I want to start there.
Sure.
Because through your route, you had a very important decision at a point.
Yeah.
And I have to know what choice you made at that key moment. And since you actually played that route, can you explain the circumstances behind it? Because I went Golden Deer.
Sure.
So I actually don't know about this other than watching it through YouTube videos.
Yeah, I mean, well, she basically asks you to go to her coronation at one point, and if you don't happen to do Explore on that one day and say, yes, I'll go with you, then you skip entirely the process of like getting to actually side with her, even to the point where you're in that mission. You like talk to her, and then you know it has that option where it's like, do you kill Edelgard now or do you go after her? It doesn't say like go after her. There's no additional thing like side
I didn't
with her.
even know that
Wow.
was a possible
It just
thing
says
to miss. ...
Me too.
Yeah,
So I was
wow.
playing through my playthrough on stream, and
Yeah.
everybody's like, you need to do Explore today. You need to do Explore.
Yeah.
But they weren't telling me why. And I always did Explore because it's fun to, interact
Right.
with your students. And I talked to her, and then all of a sudden it just switches. And I mean, you've played it. When it starts playing the bombastic music, and all of a sudden you're at the capital of the empire, and then her dad's there, and he hands over the reins to you. It's one of the most epic, out of nowhere scenes. But then it like goes back to happy-go-lucky church stuff and hanging out with your friends for like 2 weeks, and then right when you get that final mission, all hell breaks loose. Yeah.
It was really interesting reviewing the game because it was a lot of, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea to look up
Yes.
what the consequences of these actions are. And so when it came to side with Edelgard or side with the church, it was like, I don't know, Edelgard seems pretty dope.
Yeah.
That's a good reason.
That was really the logic behind it, because it was like, I feel like I've gotten to know her and the students a lot. And although I'm not exactly sure why Edelgard is doing this and what all of the machinations are that are going into her decisions, I feel like I've come to have some level of trust there. And so like I was hesitant, when I picked it, I wasn't exactly sure what was going to go down. I had it in my mind like, is this going to lead to some kind of bad ending? But no, it was awesome. It was fantastic.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, especially like the final mission of that. Like, I don't want to spoil you.
Oh, no, you could,
I'm
I
allowed.
know how everything plays out now. Yeah,
Bro, that
So go ahead.
final mission where you have the immaculate one at the top, it's playing that epic orchestral track. You've got Cyril on his Wyvern Rider on one side, Catherine on the other side, brandishing the Thunderbrand. You got Gilbert down here with Ash. They're all coming at you. You go up the left flank, and then all of a sudden they come at you as you're fighting Rhea. It is one of the most amazing missions in any Fire Emblem game, and I'm a huge fan of Fire Emblem. I played almost all of them. Like, it is, I would say, top 5 best missions in Fire Emblem. It's that good. And getting to experience that, especially like you said, like if you're playing on a harder route and your characters are dying and you're not resetting to get them back. Like for me, I was doing it all live. And so I felt like there's a part of me that needs to sort of do permadeath.
Yeah.
Like if I run out of divine pulses, that's it. Like they're dead forever. And so on the second to last mission where you fight Dimitri in our route, I lost everyone on Dedu. Literally like Mercedes, Hanneman, everybody on Dedu. So I did the Divine Pulse like time and time again to get to the beginning, and I critted Rhea when she shows up. And I went, there's no going back now. Like, I have to just finish this one on entirely. And then that's when Mercedes comes in and like Hanneman comes in. I lose them, so Sylvain and Manuela are left without like spouses. And I go into that last mission 2 down, and literally at the very end of the mission when you're fighting Rhea, I lost literally everyone except for Byleth, Edelgard, Lysithea, Ferdinand, and Bernie. And that's all that's left.
But you didn't lose Bernie.
I didn't.
Yeah.
So, protect Bernie at all costs, of course.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting because until the day that we shot this, I did the Black Eagles playthrough, and I sided with Edelgard, and I've dumped a few hours into Claude's route, Golden Deer. But beyond that, I didn't know how the other routes played out. And I was looking into it, and I read about the other routes, and it was like, in my vision of Fire Emblem Three Houses and the story that I walked away from, after 46 hours, 50 hours, whatever it was, I think it was 46. But it was like, how could I side with Rhea in any of the other routes? The way that this built up, what you find out what the church is doing, what their kind of secret plans are, how could you ever side with Rhea? That just doesn't seem right. And so it's really interesting how you have multiple storylines going on. You have the church, which is connected to Byleth, but then you have these three individual people that are after their own goals, and in one way or another, they're going to be with the church because it serves them, and they're allied with it for one reason or another, or they're against them. And it's just, it's good, but it was frustrating reading about the other routes because there was background information I felt like I didn't get in my playthrough, and it was like, man, I feel great about Edelgard. I feel great about the Empire. I feel like I know... I feel like that whole thing is fleshed out, but I don't feel like the villains are necessarily there with me, or I don't understand. I don't know why these houses are fighting against me so ferociously. Like, I don't understand their motivations as much, and that's a little bit frustrating. And I understand that you're supposed to play through every single route to get all of that, but I think there could have been just a little bit more to make some of those scenes register a little bit more in an individual playthrough, I guess.
Yeah, that was my biggest frustration. So I played through the Golden Deer route, and a lot of the stuff you got to experience with Edelgard, stuff that I had to watch through YouTube videos, just because I felt like there was such a key component of the narrative missing by the end of my playthrough. The battle you're describing where you go against Rhea, the Immaculate One, like all that stuff in the Golden Deer version, especially if you side with the church. And so they're still alive with you and on your side. It's basically normal Edelgard in her little palace throne room and just a bunch of soldiers coming in, and you just got to reach her and kill her. And they try and play it out like this emotional scene where you draw your sword in a cutscene and Byleth slashes her and kills her, and then it cuts to gameplay of her dying and doing the Fire Emblem fade away. It's like the music and stuff. It's like, how sad. We're telling you to be sad. But from my perspective, playing through the Golden Deer, I had no emotional attachment to Edelgard. I didn't fully understand some of the motivation behind her. The whole thing of like, why is she posing as the Flame Emperor? Who are these other people around her? What's their backstory? Why are they doing this? I get, the church, of Seros, they have their gripes against them. They maybe a little too aggressive with their enforcement of their policies and their religion, but wow, you're gonna go all out war? Like, what caused this? And I never had that, and for me, that moment was not it. And then they pull the rug out from under me and say, oh, by the way, she wasn't even the final boss. No. There's this whole thing called Twisted. You're gonna go after them. And remember that bad guy in the very first cutscene of the game, Nemesis? He's the real final villain. Comes out of nowhere. I was like, wait, what? Man. So listen, I just want to say this. I love the story of my students. I love playing with the Golden Deer. In fact, starting a New Game Plus as the Blue Lions, it was hard. I couldn't tear myself away from the Golden Deer. I was like, you're not my students. These are my students. I can't grow as attached to you. So they did a really good job in that respect. But when it comes to Fire Emblem Three Houses and its overall story, I do agree with you. I wish there has to be a better way to present some of those nuggets of information to you on a single playthrough, or at least an easier way to go back so you don't have to replay the whole game. Because as far as I've seen, everything up to the time skip is virtually identical for the Three Houses. You get a little bit of extra information here or there, but the significant changes come post-time skip. And I think it's a tall ask. My biggest gripe with this game, Ben, is that it asks me to potentially play through the game 3 times to get the full story.
Well, 4.
And 4 if you do, if you want everything.
Right.
There's 2 Black Eagles routes, and it's like, in a long JRPG, just a long RPG period, that's a tall ask.
Sure.
And
I think what it comes down to is it's cool getting more context for those characters, because I was going to ask you, I was like, hey, man, in your playthrough, did Edelgard seem super one-dimensional and kind of zealous to the point that it didn't make any sense to you? Because she is very adamant about her goals, but choosing her side you really come to understand it in a way that it makes sense. Her commitment to that goal makes sense, whereas it seems like from the other perspectives, maybe it doesn't. Where you're like, what are you doing, Edelgard? Like, just chill out for a second.
Yes.
And I think what is frustrating is when you have those moments, like you described, where you're playing on your very first playthrough, you're playing as the Golden Deer, and you're having that face-off against Edelgard. If you understood her the way that you would during a Black Eagles playthrough, that moment would maybe feel awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
And so even if you go and you play it later, that moment in that first playthrough won't have that emotional impact. And it was the same thing for me. When I exiled Claude, it was just like, I don't even care. I don't even know
like you're the
you.
goofball from our student phase. Like, it's fine, whatever. Like, I'm going to let you live because I like you.
Yeah, you like lose out. But I also felt the same way about Dimitri.
Right.
Because
Dimitri, I will say this, because I've played up to, I think, chapter 9, whichever one right before the time skip.
Okay.
I played up to that chapter in Dimitri's.
Yeah,
Dimitri's
same here.
feels very different from Edelgard's, because you find out a lot of information about, like, their family history and the stepmother and how they're actually step siblings. And that, for whatever reason, is, like, barely in our route at all. And that's the one thing throughout, like, the Claude and Edelgard and Dimitri differences, is I was like, the one thing I thought I was missing out on is when you kill Dimitri and you have the knife at his throat and he's saying, like, for my stepmother, for your mother, the daughter who killed her step, you're like, whoa, who are you talking about?
Right.
Who is this? And you're like, wait, this is Edelgard. They're siblings.
In your school messing around days, he's just like this super straightforward kind of like, I don't know, what's the right word for it? Like kind of haughty nobleman from this kingdom.
Studious a little bit.
Yeah, he just seems very typical. And reading about the other past, it seems like he has the biggest transformation.
Absolutely.
Out of any of them. And it's just like, I don't know. And so when he dies, in the Black Eagles playthrough, I didn't feel it in the way that I was hoping.
I felt it still. I just was very shocked by, like, the reveal. But at that moment, when you do kill him, especially after Dedue, when he sacrifices himself, he's like, I'm using this crest, baby. He goes, attack on Titan, and he goes all out like that. That was crazy. And so, I mean, I felt it when you were killing Dimitri, and I think especially because I was playing permadeath. And so it was like, I just lost Mercedes and Hanneman, who I've grown to love for, like, full playthrough episodes. I was so excited to play with them till the end. I lose them, and I had bloodlust in my heart. I'm ready to kill Dimitri. Like, he's going down today. The music swells. It's fantastic. Yeah.
What I will say though, maybe in defense of Fire Emblem Three Houses, where like I feel like maybe at some point they made a choice where it's like, okay, we could give you all this context for everybody, but then if we do that, we have to take away time from this kind of slow burn at the monastery and really diving into every single individual student and really getting, like, the way that they structure that game with the months and the calendar, like, more so than any experience I've had with Fire Emblem, I felt like I knew every single person in my army so well. Yeah. And, like, I loved every single one of them. Yeah. And I really felt like I got into the minutia of what they were about, why they acted the way they did, whatever flaws that they had, it felt really justified. And so if that's the consequence, if it's like, okay, well, you won't get all of the lore and all of the background on everybody, and you won't understand every single motivation, but the decision that you do make, you'll be able to really invest in that and get to know the students. I think it's a good trade-off.
It makes sense, though, too, because if you're looking at it from a story perspective, right, or even, like, real-life war, you're only going to hear it from one side, whatever you side with. Like, you're not going to know the minute details of, like, why people are doing this or what their motivations are. So it makes sense for each route that, like, some of that information's concealed, so you don't find out till the very end, like, oh, they're siblings. But the one thing that's so interesting about Edelgard's route is that you do understand where she's coming from, like with the experimentation of the crests, and then as you find out, like, that Rhea implanted her mother in you as a baby, and you're like, Rhea's horrible. Like, why would anyone side with her? But then you get to that moment where I forgot what area. It's like I think it was the one after Claude, after you save Claude, and the area is already liberated. You're good, and Arundel, like, drops that nuke on them. And you're like, why did you do that? What the heck was the point of all that? And then she lies to the other Black Eagles, and she tells them, like, well, this is the church, man. The church did this. And she knows full well it's Arundel. And at that point, I'm like, Edelgard, I understand why she did it for the purposes of war, where it's like she's trying to, get everyone behind this one true villain. But at the same time, you're like, I think you might have gone about this the wrong way.
But I feel like you can go the other way with the church and be allied
absolutely.
with the church, and then get to the end and be like, oh wait, like you were just using me,
Absolutely.
like you were being deceitful, you weren't being. So I feel like if the message is like, it's really just about competing ideologies. It's not necessarily about good versus evil. I agree. I think that was done
Absolutely.
pretty effectively because, like I said, when I was reviewing it, I didn't have the benefit of getting all of the context, and that the decisions that I made were really came from, well, I know these people, I like these people, and you're right, in that actual circumstance, that's all you can do. You kind of are making a decision without the whole context, and there are things that you'll probably rationalize that aren't so sweet.
Yeah, it's interesting because going through the Golden Deer, like seeing the perspective that you just talked about, if you're not aware of it, Claude, basically, the Golden Deer, their goal and ideology, I started with the church, but even with that, their ideology, their ultimate goal was basically, we want to unify Fodland as well,
right?
But we want to destroy all these systems. Empire is bad. The kingdom's bad. Like, we're like all these, like, basically these ideologies coming together. Like, their route is about diversity.
Right.
All these different backgrounds. Like, you find out Claude's not even from Fodland. He's from Elmira, and, like, where Cyril's from. So he's like, that's why he had to keep it hidden. That's why he's always so dodgy about it. Like, I'm not really from here. I'm a foreigner. So they tackle all these, like, issues about it and say, like, like, Claude's dream is, I want to basically break down all these barriers and systems so that we could try again with something that's better than all of this, because all this crest, all this religion stuff, like, it's all of it is just brought about war, endless war for thousands of years, and it's not working. I was like, I like this ideology. This is pretty good. Yeah. But also at the same time with the church, like, seeing the other sides, like how bad they were, like doing the stuff with the crest, like lying and stuff. When I got to the end of it, like they do their best in the route I played to get paint a sympathetic picture of Rhea. Basically, listen, I just want to see my mom again.
Right.
Like, I was doing this because, like, my kind was brutally murdered by humans. You guys started this by murdering us to make us weapons. All those nice weapons, those legendary weapons you have, those are the bones of my, like, my kin. And I just, like, we fought, we won and stuff, but, like, I wanted my mother back and, like, our siblings, and this is why I did it. At the end, she repents. She's like, listen, I understand I deceived people and I did wrong because I wanted this one thing. But in the end, the closest I ever got was you, Byleth, essentially. But, like, it's time for a new era. Like, I see the error of my ways. Yeah. She relinquishes. I'm like, okay, she's standing aside. Like, maybe that might not be enough in everyone's eyes, but I love that ideology presented there, that there could be, like, a different way presented for that. And I love the Golden Deer so much for that. But at the same time, like, Edelgard, the whole thing about being one-dimensional that was a problem. Right. They just, like, present, you are bad. We're bad. We're just evil. Right. Like, the whole Javelin of Light thing was like, oh, we knew you would be there, so we, like, launched it on you anyway. We were willing to kill our own people to kill all of you. And the church was like, oh, wow.
But I mean, that's not helped by the fact that we have Hubert on our side, right? Hubert is, like, the most smart, but I love him. Like, when the first time I met and talked to Hubert, it was a support conversation between Hubert and Ferdinand. And this line stuck with me to this day. Is like, Ferdinand says some goofy thing about, like, how weird Hubert is. And Hubert just looks at him and goes, will the filth that ever flows out of the river of the orifice of your mouth ever stop flowing, you imbecile? And he goes in on Ferdinand, and you're like, you didn't need to do that to him, Hubert. Like, why are you acting like this? And then throughout the course of the Black Eagles, as you find out more about him and about, like, he's actually a good guy. Right. He was against when they tried, like, all the other people tried to do coup d'etat against the Empire.
About that,
He was against all that. He's like, I'm standing with Edelgard because the Prime Minister and all those other people, they messed everything up. I killed my own dad. I'm here for you. And then you're like, all right, you're right or die, Hubert. I can live with this. Amazing.
Hubert is a fascinating character for me because you talk about somebody like Bernadetta, where, like, just instantly likable, right? And then you find out her tragic backstory, and you become even more sympathetic to her. But Hubert is like, this isn't entirely true, but it's mostly true, where he's just kind of always a dick, but you just get on board with it. You're like, you're so committed to your way of doing things that like it turns from kind of like this cold, distant, like, this guy, to like, No, you're ride or die,
Yeah,
and there's something
exactly.
very respectable about that kind of emerges as you spend more time with him.
And the support conversations obviously help that too. I feel like these are some of the best written
yeah.
support conversations, and it's weird, of course, going through the different routes because my girlfriend was like you. She played Golden Deer, and she had mentioned like, wow, my route really feels like the side route. Like, that was her impression of going through it. She was like, I chose the wrong route. I should have chosen Dimitri Edelgard. And at that point, I wasn't as far as she was. And so I didn't know, like, oh, Edelgard's sort of the bad guy. And, like, Dimitri's going against her. And, you know, Claude's trying to unite all the different...
Right.
Like, I didn't know any of that going into it. But she was like, you'll see. You should have chosen Edelgard. And then as I finally went through that and I'm talking through the support conversations, and, you know, of course, I think we all did this. I tried to recruit as many people as possible during the school phase, and I got those supports between the Black Eagle people and the people from the other houses. That's when I really sympathized with them. And I think that's where some of the best conversations flourish. It's like in the cross-house support conversations where like Felix doesn't like sweets, but like Cynthia's obsessed with them. And so like this Golden Deer girl feeds these sweets to this Blue Lions guy who hates them but will eat them because it's her sweets. It's like, I love them. I love all these characters so much.
It is amazing how all the characters, there's none that I'm like, I don't, from the students.
Right.
I think there are other characters.
Of the students, for sure.
Yeah, beyond the students that I don't think are that fantastic. But as far as the students themselves, I think they're pretty fantastic.
I think the only one I was in danger of disliking was Lawrence at first because his arc pre-time skip is kind of a creeper. Every support conversation with him and Byleth is basically like, I'm getting complaints from other females about you about how you're interacting with them. Basically, being too aggressive with trying to court them. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm like this royalty noble guy. Like, they should be honored. I'm talking to them. And he's just ignorant every time. Yeah. But when you go post-time skip, he realizes he was an asshole. Yeah. Like, dude, I was problematic and a creep. And he just completely transforms. I'm like, okay, anime trope 101 right here. Like, the dislikable dude usually becomes really likable at the end.
That's something, and I can't speak to the character of every single student because I didn't spend time with every single student in that way. But from what I experienced from a Black Eagles perspective, the sense that I got is they never leave somebody just like that. Like you're saying, he's not. Yeah. He eventually comes to recognize the mistake of his ways. Yeah. They kind of do that with everybody where there's like this moment where they try to make sense of themselves. And I think like Ferdinand is a really good example.
Ferdinand's a great example.
Where like he's kind of this like arrogant guy who comes from a very privileged world, but rather than just like using that to, I don't know, be shitty to people, he takes a step back and he's like, wait a minute. How should I be doing this? Like, it's that moment of self-reflection, I think, that makes them so endearing. But I want to go quickly back to the Golden Deer thing, and you saying that it was a side story thing, and you saying how much you loved like the Golden Deer ideology, but you didn't get all of this other stuff. And I feel that way about the Golden Deer. It's like I didn't get this sense from Claude at all about his plans for unification, and I almost feel like Fire Emblem Three Houses is like maybe trying to do way too much because you have like. You know, you have the Alliance, you have the Kingdom, you have the Empire. They're all trying to do their own thing. Then you have the Church. But then you also just have, like, Byleth and her own personal story with Sothis. And it's like there are so many stories happening. And, Byleth, I think, is kind of a frustrating character. Okay. Where, like... I say she because I played female Byleth. No, but what I mean by that is, like... In a game where character motivations are so clearly defined, as we've talked about with the different houses, having this silent protagonist that is just kind of there and like you're part of different storylines, like the Church is trying to use you, but you don't really get to like say anything about that. Like you just get to pick who you side with. Yeah. Feels a little bit weird, especially when paired with a character like Edelgard where there's so much agency there. No, this is who I am. Yeah. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm going to do it. And I think it's like exemplified in the very beginning of the game where it's just like, yeah, you're just a professor now. Whatever. It happened in like an hour. Yep. Yeah. So I think that kind of silent protagonist character doesn't work as well in this storyline where other motivations are so well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's also, it doesn't help that most of the choices when you're like doing Byleth talking to another character all pretty much do lead to the same thing. So I got to the point right after, I think it's the Remeyer Village mission, where then you meet the Flame Emperor. And I was like on my playthrough, I was talking to my chat. About. Yeah, and I accidentally clicked, let's hang out together. And I went, oh my, and I started freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? Like, no way. And then right after that, in all of the routes, but specifically for our route, it's funny because then Edelgard comes up to you and she's like, what'd you think about that guy, the Flame Emperor? Like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, oh shit, do I tell her? Like, do I not tell her? So I was just like, I mean, let's hear him out. And I thought, like, oh, this is going to be terrible. You know how they have the support conversation, like, down thing if you see something wrong? And then that didn't happen. And I was like, and she's like, oh, well, keep that in mind for the future. Yeah. And that's the point where I was like, what's going on here? So then when you get to that twist about her actually being the Flame Emperor, even up to the sentence before Hubert comes out and is like, yeah, so she's the Flame Emperor, like, right before that moment, I assumed the Flame Emperor was her father. And that her father died, was the Flame Emperor, and now she's like taking the mantle up. What I didn't realize is this girl was the Flame Emperor when your dad died, and then was like, that really sucks for you, dude. Like, that's terrible that this happened. She's the one who hired them. It's like you've been working together the whole time. But at the same time, because you understand where she's coming from, I think that speaks volumes about the character, at least in our route, because I was still like, yeah, but I like you more, so I'm going to go with you.
Like Edelgard in this cutthroat approach, there's this bluntness with her. There's this honesty where it's like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Like, this is all I care about in the world, and I will do anything to make it happen. Like, you know that.
Of course.
The whole way, which I think is really interesting. And so that, to me, contrasts with somebody like Byleth, where I feel like things just kind of happen to Byleth, you know? Like, when you see Edelgard making all of these decisions and doing all of these things, it's like, no, she's giving everything, and Hubert with her is giving everything to make this dream come to life. Whereas I feel like a lot of times you just are kind of going through the motions as Byleth, and all the students are like, wow, you're amazing. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of, you feel like this sort of chosen one thing in a really cheesy, artificial way that I think doesn't mesh well with the other characters that do feel very grounded and believable and have interesting.
Yeah, now you make that point. I wonder why they just didn't let you, when you choose your house, when you just be either Claude, Dimitri, or Edelgard instead of that. That's what I'm saying. Because, like, thinking back, like, I know they've done the player character for.
They needed the next Smash Brothers character. They have to have blue hair.
Yeah,
that's it.
I mean, a lot of the heroes have had blue hair in this series, but I mean, even think about it, like, to my favorite two games, Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn, Ike, the character development that he goes through, like, you're not really getting any character development either with your characters. You learn the twist at the end. Oh, who are you really? It's like a mystery, and that's the only hook you have. But otherwise, your character doesn't really change from the beginning to end.
Here's my thought process on this.
Yeah.
This is truly why I think Byleth and Robin and Kamui and all. Kamui makes sense, at least when you're playing, or Corrin in the English version of Fates. Like, it makes sense why those characters are there, and it does kind of feel a little like ham-fisted in this game. But the one thing I will say is I think the reason they did that is to keep the like support conversation stuff intact. Because I feel like if you were playing as Edelgard or Dimitri or Claude and you're trying to like romance the students together or do whatever, like, and then there was just some professor character that was there, it wouldn't feel like you are the character, that you're experiencing this stuff, that you're taking on the weight of these choices. Whereas, like, because you're playing as Byleth and you're making these choices and you're supporting certain characters and you're going your own way, they sort of needed that faceless avatar type of character. And I think if that's the cost of, like, okay, well, we don't get this great story with Byleth compared to some of the other leaders of the houses, but you get like a more deep, rich experience with the other students of the houses, I feel like it was a small price to pay, you know?
Well, I see what you're saying. I think the only thing that doesn't quite work for me with that is, like, regardless of what you do as Byleth, like, Edelgard is still going to ride or die for the Empire. Dimitri still has
Kingdom.
Yes, Dimitri still has kind of this vengeance that he wants to enact, and then Claude wants to bring people together. That kind of happens regardless of what you decide. And, like, obviously some people succeed and some people fail, but their ultimate goal, I think, kind of remains the same, especially from the Black Eagle's perspective and Edelgard. Like, I am going to do this. And so I think maybe that was what was missing for me, is it's like, what am I really giving to you? How are these decisions having an effect in a way that I can really appreciate? How have you changed from this? Because it's like, when Edelgard is saying like, "Oh man, Professor, you've taught me so much," it was like, to me, Edelgard, Flame Emperor, like you don't seem like
everything.
Yeah, you don't seem like you need me at all.
Yeah.
What did I teach you, really?
Oh yeah.
Even though her supports are really funny too, when you find out that she's been drawing pictures of you in her room and she's like obsessed with you, and then it feels weird by that point in the story. You're like, well, I have to marry this girl now. Like,
to your point about the support conversations, though, I do agree, because when you have those support conversations between Byleth and Edelgard kind of lets those walls down a little bit, and it's like, if I was just playing as Edelgard, she can't do this with anybody else. Exactly. She can do this with Byleth because, you've built up this trust and this friendship. And so getting to see that other side of that character, I do think was really valuable and cool. Yeah. So I agree with you 100% in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, I still think they could have done it without a player avatar.
For sure.
It would have taken a lot more work. Like, they would have to create a whole new character who has, well written, that is the person who gets Edelgard to bring down the walls, or with Claude brings out like, hey, we get the truth out of you of each character. But you know what? I want to go back to something really quick. The whole point about like the feeling about needing to play through all these different routes to get the full story. They do offer a new game plus,
which is awesome.
And you spend renown points to basically kind of like skip ahead in certain attributes. You can level up your professor level to immediately. You can skip certain relationship levels to the higher level. You can build up skills, a whole bunch of stuff. But as nice of it having a new game plus period, I think what would have served better potentially, Ben, is if they had reworked new game plus to be maybe a modified version. Like, oh, we know you've played through Golden Deer, so when you pick your next house, we're gonna give you like an abbreviated version of like the pre-time skip.
You have this giant tree and just go back to the point that you want.
Like, what's the game I'm trying to think of? Like, is it 999 or those types of games?
Yeah,
where they let you jump back to points. Like, that's exactly what I was thinking of, is just being able to, like, the game's about Divine Pulse rewinding. Like, let's rewind back to this point and let's see it play out from this different perspective here, because I'm still having to go through, even with all the renown, Roger, like, I'm still having to go through daily stuff. I still have to go through the months. I have to, like, still do missions. I still have to go through the motions of a lot of the things that feel very procedural at that point. And I'm just over at that point. It's like, I know this already. I've done this. I've experienced this. I want to experience the new stuff. Sure. Can we get to that a little bit quicker?
I think with that, though, right, with spending your renown, like you said, you could spend it on all these different things. I think they do that in a way where first thing you should do is you should boost up your professor level. That's the very first thing, because then you have all the activity points. You can do whatever you want. But then I think they realize that throughout the course of these other routes, it's going to be real hard for you to like go through the Blue Lions route after everything you know about Bernie, and then you get to that mission, you're going to have to kill her. It's like, I need Bernie. So they want you to spend those renown points to actually get back your favorite character so they can actually survive that route, so you never actually have to kill your favorites. I'm sure that's why they did that in that way, where you have like support level ups. But I agree with you. We were talking about this off camera, is I feel like if you ever spend your renown on support conversations, don't. Like, spend them on skills. Spend them on the professor level. Spend them on, like, the statues where you get bonuses for your missions. Because that's what's going to help you. And the thing is you can do a new game plus off of a new game plus.
Yes.
But it only carries over to that playthrough. So, like, the stuff from your playthrough before, even if that was already built into the first new game plus, you can't do it again. So, like, if you had A rank with all the Black Eagles, and now I'm doing Blue Lions New Game Plus, I can beat Blue Lions, but if I don't do the A rank with all the Black Eagle characters again, I won't have them at A rank on that next New Game Plus. Yeah. And so that's like the only reason I would say maybe put stuff into support.
It also works into a little bit more of the gameplay design that bump up the difficulty,
right?
Earn a little bit more renown on your second playthrough maybe, and then it takes like the highest renown total, I think, at the end of your playthrough and carries it over. And I think it works well in that system there. But at the same time, like I loved all this stuff. I just wanted that little extra, like maybe that's something they could do later, like a patch or something. Like,
we're getting DLC.
Yeah, we're getting DLC or something like I think that might have been just enough to be like, this isn't a big deal having to play through 3 other routes essentially, or a total of 4.
Yeah, I think the only reason though why I would even bring this up or express frustration though is just because I think Fire Emblem Three Houses did such an effective job of getting me attached to these characters in a way where it's like, oh man, like I'm in it for the students.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like as much as it would be nice to get more background on the different factions within the world outside of the monastery and kind of underneath the monastery, as it were, like I just want to, if the Golden Deer students and the Blue Lions are as good as the Black Eagles, like that's my primary driving force. And I really think they did a fascinating job with all these characters and touching on things. It's hard for a game like this, right? Where it's like you can go and just have like tea time with people in kind of this little mini. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But then it's hard, I think, sometimes, and I feel like a lot of games falter at this, to have that kind of tone and then talk about somebody like Petra and Caspar and be like, hey, my father like did terrible things to your people. Are we cool? And just kind of that tenuous relationship that they have, and somehow it works.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's optimistic and it's hopeful and it's about unity and it's about like seeing the good in people, but it doesn't feel cheesy. And the fact that the game is able to have kind of this like tea time with students and talk about past wartime atrocities and have both really work, I think is tremendous.
And I think there's so many shonen that do that correctly, right? I mean, we're talking about it's like obviously there's anime cutscenes and all that stuff that's in this Fire Emblem, and it's been like that for the past however many games now, right? It's like Awakening really added in like, here's the waifu system, here's like all this other stuff that's going to make it very, very anime-like. And yeah, I think that's something that, again, you notice it in a lot of shonen anime, but it works in something like Hunter x Hunter and something like One Piece. You have these really dark themes alongside like Luffy getting really fat because he ate a bunch of meat, or like Gon goofing around with Killua eating sweets. Whereas in this, yeah, you have those tea time interactions, you've got the super dark stuff in the backstories, but it never feels like you're in a different world, right? It feels like it still makes sense within the world of Fodlan. So
I think that maybe the difference between like a good shonen anime and this is like I think about Fire Emblem Fates, and I just wasn't nearly as invested in the characters in that story because it felt like the decision between the two different sides was undermining the story that they were trying to tell. Whereas like here I feel like the decisions don't compromise the characters. Like the way that they treat you in Fates and they talk about you like as a sibling and
I love my big brother.
Right. Yeah. It just seems so forced and not believable. Whereas I feel like the characters here, they're not so like obsessed with you or enamored with you in the same way. Like they feel like their own people. And so I think I'm surprised that it's able to alternate between all those different tones while also having this abundance of choice.
Yeah, I think it's because they decided to kind of like slow things down with the whole monastery, like the school system. It's like, let's actually give them a setting. Let's actually flesh out this area. You can walk around and engage with the students and do other activities to foster this kind of like social aspect of this game that they've just been pushing and pushing harder and harder on. And I think they finally found at least the footing, at the very least, for what to like build upon going forward to make it feel better integrated, to feel a little bit more natural and not so kind of. I mean, it's also better writing on top of it, but it definitely plays to the strengths of the social system with this.
It gives it. Because they kind of extend things out through this calendar system, you actually have characters for the room to breathe, which really helps.
Especially if you're instructing manually and like doing everything by hand. You're going through and talking to everybody, and they're changing their goals. Yeah. You're answering like the little cathedral advice box, and you're doing choir lessons with all of them. There's all these other ways to interact with these characters, and just like you were talking about with Fates, I completely agree. I love Fates. I'm part of like the minority of the Fire Emblem fan base that has no problem. Like I love that game, but
there's a lot to love.
You're completely right though with the characters that it is very forced in that. And while we were talking earlier about Byleth kind of feeling forced at times, it never felt anywhere near the extent that Fates did. And so I do feel like, this is a good middle ground. This sort of Persona, Fire Emblem way of going about things. I do really want them to keep this moving forward for the next games. But my concern is that I'm assuming the next game is going to be a remake, right? Because they've been doing that. You had the Shadow Dragon remake, or it was Awakening and then Shadow Dragon, or one of them. It was like Awakening and then we got the Echoes too, and then Fates. It was Awakening, Fates. Shadow Dragon was before Awakening, and then
Shadow Dragon
was
before.
Right. Yep. So, but they've been doing a lot of remakes, and I think there's a lot of those games that never came to North America that they're like ripe for remakes, 3 and 4, and I do think they'll probably end up doing another Echoes game for Switch before getting to another mainline Fire Emblem. And so I'm curious if they're actually going to take any of these support aspects or these character stuff, or if they're going to make that the like core Fire Emblem series moving forward, and that this is sort of The mainline series is kind of like what we were talking about with Monster Hunter earlier, right? Where there is the old school Monster Hunter, like you need to go to each area and you have the potions and nothing's spoken to you out loud. You have to like try to figure out everything. Whereas World is like, here, follow these little magical fireflies and go to your next area. Here's where the characters are, and I do feel like they're sort of doing that divide with Fire Emblem, and I wouldn't have a problem with that, but also I liked this so much in Three Houses that I don't really want to go back anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting point, but you brought up Echoes, and I feel like so much in Echoes gets echoed in Three Houses, where you have the turn wheel, right, and then you have Divine Pulse. It almost seems like kind of a testing ground for this, and just like I know that it was like this originally, but Fire Emblem Echoes not having the weapon triangle, and then Three Houses not having the weapon triangle. It seems like you have these ideas kind of expanded upon, and so if they were to do that, I would be way okay with it if they do another remake, but they're like, we're going to throw in some new ideas and see where they take us, and then in the next sequel we may abandon them or expand greatly upon those.
Yeah, I don't think there's honestly. I don't think there's any going back anymore. Right, I don't think they can. I think they're committed to this course. It's what's made this series become a breakout. It's now a AAA series for them in terms of like
can I
revenue
just say, like,
generating.
as an anime fan and a Nintendo fan, that makes me so happy. This is a AAA franchise now.
Like they're gonna push what sells these games and what keeps its mass appeal going, and it's this.
And like, it's also encouraging because. When people talk about Awakening, I think the conversation that gets brought up a lot is, well, oh, boy, waifus really helped, bring attention to this. And like, yes, that exists on some level in Three Houses, but it doesn't feel cheap. They don't lean in it in a way where you feel like they're pandering. It doesn't feel like a game that is pandering. It's telling a serious story. It's doing right by its characters, and I think that's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's a good balancing act, and I think they're getting better at it. There's still problems, but they're getting better at it. It's almost like the first Valkyria Chronicles. We're trying to balance, hey, we got to do anime tropes, but at the same time, we're still trying to tell a serious story here. Right. It's how do you juggle all that without coming off as completely unbelievable, goofy, and bad.
Yeah.
And
I think they're legitimately doing a good job with balancing it. But I want to talk about the calendar system really quickly.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
So it's great. First of all, it's great that I love everything that you can do is good, and just like looking forward to going around and talking to people and kind of going through the motions of the day of life. Like it gives you a strong sense of being at a school without like being mired in so much minutia that you come to hate it. I think the only thing that I would like to see improved upon is have it keep evolving a little bit more throughout the entire game. Yeah. Because I feel like, and I'm just spitballing here, but I feel like you get to like 30%, 40% of the way through the game, and it's like, all right, this is the rhythm of the monastery.
Oh, absolutely.
And then even after the time skip and like the monastery is damaged, it's still kind of exactly the same.
I mean, when you do your seminar days, right, the only difference is that before they were at desks. And now, because you're all older and you're equals, now you're at a big, long table talking to each other. But I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
The one issue I will have is that they really build up like, oh, if you rest on this day, your special weapons get to heal themselves. But if you're doing the battles like you're supposed to, where you're getting humble steel from you don't need the rest days. So to me, that was the only thing where it was like, I kind of, like the 1 or 2 times I did rest, I was like, I really feel like I wasted my days.
I don't think I rested one
Not
time.
once.
Because it never seemed like the right option, you know?
I will also say this too, is that especially once you unlock like the master classes, and I should have known this as a Fire Emblem fan, you really should have been investing time in writing, heavy armor, and flying from the very beginning with all your units. And they allow you to see those master units from the very beginning. You just prick ZL, and then it says like, oh, here's the classes, all this stuff. And for me, like, I got really sad near the end of my Black Eagles route, because the only ones who were able to be master classes were Felix, who I used as like a mortal savant, Dorothea, who was a Grimory, and then like Byleth and Mercedes, and that was it. And no one else was at their master. Oh no, Edelgard was too, but no one else was like at their master class level because I didn't invest time in writing or flying. Whereas now on this second route, like I'm on chapter 8 or 9 of Blue Lions, and I'm already at like the advanced class for Cyril, where he's riding on the back of like a Wyvern Lord. And the only reason I even put time in that was because in the final battle with Rhea, I don't know if you recruited Cyril or not, but if you didn't, Cyril, you fight him during that, and he
Yes.
becomes one of the most difficult units in the whole game because he crits you every other time, and you can't hit him. He's got like a 50% chance of hitting or something. And I want this unit like really badly on my squad for the next playthrough. So I went out of my way. I recruited Cyril. I invested time in flying, and now he's an absolute monster. But I feel like they did it on purpose. They didn't tell you you're supposed to invest in that because if you do that on your first playthrough, it almost feels like this game is too easy.
Yeah.
And I've seen that as a complaint with a lot of people who are hardcore Fire Emblem fans being like, this does seem a little too easy.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of hit a sweet spot, especially if you're playing it hard.
So that's the thing is I played through on normal and like you don't even really need to engage with the systems in the way that it feels like you should. Like you just don't have to pay attention as much to combat arts or battalions, despite I think those being pretty good. They're well implemented within the game, and then playing on hard, it's like I agree with you. It's a good sweet spot where it's like it's never like oppressively difficult. And I think if you're paying attention and properly raising your students, it's good. But it feels like you are actually engaging with the game the way that it's intending for you to. And so I wish I would have done that initial playthrough on hard because I think it would have been a lot more satisfying.
Hard classic mode, baby.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
I did classic, but
Yeah, I do it that way. I want to talk more about the monastery really quick.
Sure.
I got plenty to say on the difficulty, but before we forget about the monastery, I agree with you with the schedule thing. Like, in terms of, like, exploring the monastery and doing the different activities ahead, I feel about month 2 or 3, that kind of charm wore off for me. And the visual stuff really bugged me. Like the season's changing, but nothing changes there. Like Winterfall, these simple quality of life things they could have added to the monastery, whatever setting they pick in the future. That's an easy thing they could do to make like this rain on a day or something.
Can we talk about lost items really quick?
Sure, go ahead. Lost items. Yeah,
Because like, and I have to imagine. I feel like I've seen a meme about this, so there has to be other people who felt this way and experienced lost items this way, where like. The game, it sort of feels like it's intending for you to, like, know everybody and be able to think of, like, oh, this thing in their history or this thing that they like, that it'll be this one specific lost item. And sometimes that happens, but I feel like very quickly you just get to a point where it's like, I don't know. I'm going to go down the whole list. Hopefully you like the thing.
And you hear the same voice clip over and over again. Nope, that's not. Okay, nope, that's not. And it keeps going.
I don't know if you picked up, but the lost items are where the character who's for was the month before. So where they were standing is so if you couldn't figure out based on the clue, that's where it was.
I didn't know that.
No idea.
So when they move around,
I put 85 hours in this game and I did not know that. That's crazy.
I think on when I played for a few hours on the stream, and someone in chat said, "By the way, that's how you figure it out." It's like if you can't remember who's who from the clue, just remember where they were last month. I was like, really? And then I started paying it. It's like, whoa, this is way easier. But Ben, same thing. Just spamming. Like I think Ingrid was the worst because she gets like so kind of like belligerent with you. Like, no, this isn't mine. No, I was like, okay.
So I think Ferdinand's the same way. He's like, how could you think this is mine?
So the reason that I bring that up is whether you brute forced it or you did it legit. I think the point remains where it's like I don't think this is the best system for this.
Sure.
Like. It's a good way, I think, to like go and talk to everybody and just add that extra layer of encouraging you to have those conversations and not just be like, oh, I don't want to do this. But I think there's some sort of better system there that would maybe
definitely
like be quicker, I guess. And also maybe give you a little bit more of a deeper interaction because it's not like you give them that lost item and you really have a better understanding of that character on any like significant level.
No.
And so I think I think there's some sort of system that can be done in place of that I think.
And honestly, all these activities boil down to like spam feeding, like stuffing food down their mouths to make them happy, so that like they'll hit a certain level. So they'll like, wait, now we can have a conversation. Like, keep giving me gifts, saying gift over and over again.
Now I want to join your house. Exactly.
Like, I mean, it's not just that. Like the activities become a little like remedial and dull. And some of the ones they have there, like planting, cultivating, harvesting crops. fishing.
Yeah.
Even the blacksmith system there, it's still just like it's like menus that serve to get items to then like increase your social stature. One of the things I would kind of like to see them try and do maybe going forward is fleshing those out to become more of a subsystem. Imagine fishing instead of just, I got to fish. Now it's an ingredient to go cook, to have a sit down dinner with somebody. What if you could actually have like a fishing class outside of combat?
Oh, yeah.
And you like gotta worry about like fishing lines, different like bait and stuff, or the harvesting. It gets basically flesh out into a more like full featured system.
Yeah.
Even like blacksmithing, like you gotta hit a certain level and then maybe get cheaper prices. That stuff I can see myself sinking more time into. But after a certain point, I was just like, I know what this is. I'm done with fishing. I'm never gonna fish again in this game, and that's such a disappointment.
Yeah.
And harvesting, it's like, I might need a few more ingredients for this meal because I need it to get this last bit of relationship between someone.
Yeah.
But other activities, I feel like just needed to be more to do around the monastery in general.
Yeah, it's a hard balance,
Yeah.
I think, because the more involved they make all this stuff, I feel like the less they can do, or the more tired you'll get of it over dozens of hours.
Right.
And so on some level, you want it to be very simple and not too involved and a little bit mindless. But I think part of the problem is, and I feel like kind of the opening hours of that game are the most magical with the monastery, where you have sections of it closed off.
Oh, yeah.
Or you have systems that are closed off, and you can only do these few things, and then your loop that you do at the monastery just gets a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time.
Way to do it.
But then I feel like we get to that outer ring way too quickly. Whereas
it's like 40% in, like you said.
Right. I think they could either just have that ring keep getting bigger, or maybe, I don't know, just I wanted the monastery to evolve a little bit more. And I think what I was saying, like, especially post time skip, where it feels like, like shit has gone down. Like, why are we still functioning kind of the same?
Right.
That gets to be a little bit jarring.
Yeah, so weird. Like, one of the things I was trying to judge the monastery in terms of like whether I really liked it or not was the fact that getting familiar with the environments and the different areas, so that like I felt like, do I really live here? Do I know my way how to walk to like the classrooms, and then to get over to the stables, and then to go, up to the tower and see Rhea and stuff, or go over to the church? And one of the things I understand why they put fast travel into the game. But honestly, I know this is a bit of a contradiction because I was saying you got a little remedial.
Yeah.
But at the same time, fast travel for me kind of took away from that essence of feeling like I lived in the school. It wasn't that big. I think maybe a fast travel just to like the four corners, like the cardinal directions, would have been fine.
Yeah.
But the fact that I was just constantly fast traveling to, where's so-and-so? They're right there. Just go right there. Now talk to them. It felt like this another layer of like menu management to me, rather than feeling in a living, breathing environment. And I was hoping they were going to like deliver more on that feeling where I'm this professor in this school. I actually feel like things are going on here and people are living here, and they achieve it to a certain extent, but after a few months, it just became a menu system versus an environment that I actually felt engaged with.
See, that's
and
funny.
it felt
you say
unfortunate
that, though,
to me. Yeah.
Because to me, like, I do kind of know the monastery better than I know my own neighborhood now. It's like, I mean that genuinely. It's like,
I definitely do.
Yeah, it's like where you're going, like,
Oh.
I know where everyone on the route, like, okay, someone's going to be in this area at this time. Like, I know how to get there from pretty much anywhere on the map. So I did actually really appreciate having that fast travel to then be like, all right, well, I know Ignatz lost his glasses again, so I'm going to go, hop over to Ignatz, and that's it. But I get where you're coming from completely. I'm just saying, like, I'm happy the option was there. Because I do think that's one of those things that if it was like, it was an activity point to fast travel or something, I don't know. I feel like then I would be saying, this is really boring having to walk to the same area over and over again. Like, I know how to get there.
That's where
So
I'm
it's a
saying,
catch-22.
I might be contradicting myself there, but
it's hard because I think I vastly prefer it than like the traditional like battle to battle to battle to battle style. And I also think the monastery is actually a good size where if you're not fast traveling, it feels formidable. Like this, the size of the monastery there's something grand about it.
Sure.
But it's not so big that like I hated walking around it. So I think they really nailed the size. It's also hard, right? Because like they're clearly fighting against limitations.
Oh gosh.
With this monastery.
Gate never opening in the church when you run up to it.
Right.
Like in handheld mode, that gate never opened. I'd have to sit in front of it and wait for it to raise up. I was like, really? What is this?
I have to bring this up now because you mentioned the gate. We have to talk about the best NPC in the entire game, which is the gatekeeper outside of the marketplace. That dude has some of the funniest lines in the whole game. And I was hoping and praying, and Nintendo, like, I don't know if you're done with DLC or whatever, I beg of you, please, make the gatekeeper a playable character. Because in our route, that was one of my genuine concerns, is I'm like, I don't know who's going to be here after war. Like, and then the gatekeeper's like, I'm still here hanging out with you. Like, what's going on, Professor? Here's the daily news. And I went, oh, my sweet summer child. I'm so glad you're here.
I wanted more of that. Like, stuff like that. Characters who develop over the weeks or months that give me a reason to go back into the monastery and just talk to them. That was such a good thing.
I'm with you. And I think the reason why I was bringing that stuff up is because I think for like a first attempt, they did so much right. But it's just because it exists as it is, your mind just runs wild with possibility.
Of course.
And you were talking about like making it feel more alive. And I think what would go a long way is just like being able to like walk through a hall and overhearing conversations like that. I think would really help a lot, because I think it would play into the story, right? Where like, let's say you're just like going and you're doing your errands, you're trying to deliver some glasses or something, and you overhear like some shady shit go down. And you're like, I'm clearly not supposed to hear that, and then you go and you investigate it. And I think it needs to feel a little bit more dynamic, is what you're saying, where like things are happening independently of you, because the way that it is in Fire Emblem Three Houses right now, like they're going to eat when you want them to eat. They're going to, do this tournament when you want them to do this tournament. Like you are the one pushing all the buttons. And I think if the game was pushing its own buttons a little bit more, I think it would help.
That's a good point. Like, it is like definitely a good starting point. Like, obviously they got to start somewhere. Sorry, when you were saying all this, in my mind, I was thinking, I don't remember where I said it, but I joked with someone about like extending difficulties to the social system, not just battles. So like lunatic difficulty for social would be, it's not just like the monthly schedule. When you go in real time, it's by hour, and people are moving in real time, like Majora's Mask, like Xenoblade style. So like, if you miss that hour window, you miss that conversation.
That sounds awful.
I know, that's like the worst sounding thing.
I genuinely could not imagine that in Fire Emblem. I feel like and I love Xenoblade. You're talking to like Xenoblade's probably one of my top 5 favorite Nintendo franchises. I love it, but like I would hate that in the monastery.
The last thing I want to say, like, for hopeful, like looking towards the future for like, where they can go if they want to build upon this. There were a lot of cutscenes that took place in different environments outside of the monastery, like villages and towns, and I wanted to go there. I wanted to go to these shops and see other areas. And if they're looking for, hey, you want to add more variety, there you go. Like, there are these places I want to walk around and visit. Oh, man,
I would love that. And obviously, I don't even think it would need to be remotely close to the size of the monastery.
No way.
But just going to other places and being able to walk around a little bit and talk to people outside of the monastery. I think it would be super cool. This is I just thought of this. It's super obvious, but like the DLC is going to be about Gerald, right? Like,
so I do
have a different idea.
Yeah, I think if you look at all the routes, because both of us chose the Crimson Flower part of the Black Eagles route, right? But the default Black Eagles route is you side with the church. That's the default route. We just accidentally stumbled into the secret route of this game. And you can tell it is because it's like 18 chapters compared to the other 24 or 24, 22 for like all the other ones. I mean, they're substantially longer than the Edelgard secret route. So to me, I kind of feel like that extra story mode stuff that they've been talking about for that expansion pass has to be how at the end of our route, they're like, and then they went off and did the stuff with those who slither in the dark, but that's for another day or whatever. That's gotta be what it is, because to me, like at that point in our story, though, we've potentially killed Claude. We've definitely killed Dimitri. I also feel like they have to build upon those in the Slither in the Dark stuff with Edelgard, but also have to sort of go Revelations with it. And what I mean by that is that there needs to be some type of unifying thing that brings Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude together, where then nobody dies. The canon ending of the game is that they're all together. Even Rhea, like everybody's living happily ever after, because we got that with Revelations with, you know, now Nora and Hoshido, they're living together at the ending. And I kind of feel like that's the direction they have to go in with the DLC. And maybe there is going to be more with Geralt. And, you know, we're probably going to have like the Death Knight and Sothis and all that other stuff as playable characters, because people have already, you know, data mined it. And they're like, oh, Anna's playable, the shopkeeper and all this stuff. So we're going to have to get that.
I know, it has to
be
playable in DLC.
How much story is going to be there? I really don't know. And I hope it's that, right? I hope it is more stuff with Geralt. I hope it's more that with those who slither. But it could just very well be like a unifying route that somehow some easy way ties everything together and says, oh, we're all against those who slither, and that's that.
Yeah, but that That's so boring.
I agree with you. But I'm just being realistic about it. That's probably what we're gonna get.
Like, I guess, I don't know, having a route that kind of is like, okay, you're gonna get everybody in this one playthrough, and they're all gonna be on the same page, and you're gonna learn more about them all together. I guess that's kind of appealing, but I feel like, I don't know. This is just a game about making those hard decisions and having things like not go your way, or having one person's view of the world lose out to another person's view of the world. I don't know.
It's tough.
Yeah, I wonder if the DLC might just be the 1,000 years in the battle leading, like everything leading up to the fight with Nemesis.
That would be awesome too.
Like,
Actually, that would be really cool.
The Red Canyon stuff.
I also think that's like pretty needed in terms of just like
because the whole dragon race story in Nemesis is probably the weakest element of the main storyline. All three of the houses and their main characters and where they end up, despite us having fragmented information from the other ones, still on the whole were much more intriguing plots than just the story about Rhea and wanting to recreate, like, bring her mom back from the dead. It's like, that's kind of boring. Yeah.
However, if they just title the DLC, The Misadventures of Anna, like, I'm in. Like,
oh, yeah. She plays through all
just a traveling merchant who sees other mercenary stuff, like, because the world's way bigger.
Yeah,
we're just seeing Foldland, and then, like, Elmira is this kingdom to the east, and they keep referencing other areas. Like, maybe there's more to the world. Maybe we'll get, another school. Maybe the DLC is more ambitious. It's another school in another territory.
Here's the question, though, because I still don't really know, having played through this. I don't know if this is in a different universe from the other Fire Emblems, because it kind of feels like it. It feels like Marth and, that whole continent and, Crom and all the rest of them, or like Hoshido and Nor, they don't exist in this world, right? But they could. And I could easily see them doing like an all-stars, like, oh, you go to this other school on the other continent, and then here's like young Marth going to school, and here's Tiki. And I like that, to me, is another direction they could potentially go in with the story. But the one other character that's already in the game that I'm like, they kind of need to flesh out more, because I don't think it's ever permanently answered on any route, is the identity of the Death Knight. You can assume it's Jaritza. And they say multiple times, it's it's Jaritza. It's probably Jaritza.
It definitely is. And it's Mercedes' younger brother.
Right.
Brother,
it has to be, right?
It is.
But they never outright say it.
Well, no, there's stuff that you can do.
Yeah.
With Mercedes' side route, and then you have like the thing with, like, I've played through that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still, they don't like ever definitively say it is absolutely him, because you never see him, like, you never see them in the same room, obviously.
That's interesting, because what I was reading is that I think it's with Mercedes and Caspar.
Okay.
If you do, I think, a paralogue with them, then Mercedes will comfort the Death Knight when he's dying. Like,
really?
And again, I just read this today, so I didn't.
There's another parallel.
I think there's some sort of combination of things that you can do.
There's one Death Knight spares her, and then there's another one,
it is a lot
the
more
paralogs are
definitive.
different based on the routes you can do too, and support at different times.
Can you not do that in the Black Eagles one then?
I don't.
So weird.
That's what I don't know. I don't know if that, because mine I saw was in Blue Lions. So I don't know if it exists in Black Eagles. I can't. If you didn't see it, I don't know.
Some of those
it wasn't in Golden Deer from what I could tell, but it was in Blue Lions.
As far as like the All Stars crossover thing goes, I think that's always fun, but especially with Heroes, which is ongoing, and then Fire Emblem Warriors, I feel like they've done the whoa, we're all together thing that it just doesn't have the same novelty that it would. And so I don't know. I just think there's so much to this world that I would want them to drill deeper into what they've already established.
I mean, I agree. That's what I would want as well. I'm almost concerned that they're going to go the All Stars route, right? I don't want them to either.
I mean,
I am
it's
complete
just
agreement
worked
with you
so
guys.
well for them. I feel like
so many. There's like just they have so much more of the world they could talk about. There's so many things that in past Fire Emblem games that they could do that haven't even shown here, like Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn, the whole like animal race, the Lagoos, like transforming humans into monsters, like. That sort of is in here, but like not by. It's not something you can snap back and forth and do on command. It's like that would be kind of cool if they went south and there was like another continent. There's a whole bunch of possibilities there, but earlier we talked about difficulty. We talked about Divine Pulse, and we talked about how we felt hard was a good like compromise in terms of if you're a veteran, that's what you're looking for. And I'm on that side of the fence. I'm on the side of the fence of someone who's played a lot of the older Fire Emblem games. That's from Awakening onward, they've definitely trended to be a little bit easier in the name of being more accessible.
Sure.
Because I understand the older games are really hard to get into.
Yeah.
And if this is the trade-off, I think this is a fair trade-off. I think Divine Pulse is a very fair thing to do. I have like no objection to it. I don't know anyone who would have an objection to it, but for me, yeah, I didn't use it on normal. I used it once on normal, not because I died, but because I wanted to kill someone faster. I was like, I don't want to do another turn. I'm just gonna use. Can I do this? Yeah, I can do this. I can use it. Do that for them. But I do like for me, I like playing I like playing the classic style with permadeath. But my rule is. This drives Huber insane. Like, we have a clash of ideologies here, Michael Huber and I.
Okay, yeah.
I love to redo a mission if someone dies. It's like, nope, that's going back to the start. So what I'm doing on hard in my second playthrough is I actually don't use Divine Pulse. Because it's my option. I can do what I want. I restart the mission.
You can go all the way back to the
That's old
first
school
turn.
Fire Emblem.
Of course,
I was like, okay,
you know,
Divine Pulse is... If I want to rush through on a new game ever again, I will use Divine Pulse to cheese stuff. Like, I'm glad it exists for that purpose.
Sure.
But it's something you can completely ignore if you don't want to use it.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that. And I do agree, if you're someone who's played Fire Emblem a lot in the past, you should probably start on hard difficulty instead of normal, because my experience is just like yours, Ben. It was brain dead.
Yeah.
Didn't really need to use gambits. I could just basically do Phalanx Strat where just everyone grouped together and just move forward and you're all good.
See, for me, it's like you needed gambits. On hard and on classic, it was like I definitely needed them.
Definitely.
And so for me, like I obviously I don't like resetting too. I'm the same way. It's like I feel like wrong playing a Fire Emblem game resetting. It's like if the character dies, it dies. But Divine Pulse, yeah, I'm kind of like you. I wasn't against it. I just used it throughout my playthrough. And my one issue I actually have is that some of those matches on hard, it's almost like built around the fact that Divine Pulse is there. Like things come out of nowhere that are so cheap and do so much damage, especially that final Immaculate One mission. There are portions where you're fighting those giant dolls and they're like doubling, tripling their crits where you cannot touch them unless you Divine Pulse. Like you need to go all the way back to the beginning.
Man, it's so funny playing it on normal and getting to that final mission and thinking like, man, I wish more missions felt this way.
Right.
That was kind of the sensation.
On hard, that mission is crazy.
I am totally okay with like losing somebody and restarting a mission, because to me that something cool happened there where it's like, okay, I made a mistake, or like, oh, I need to do something better, or now I know about something. I just want to have a challenge in the sense that it's like I'm putting all this time not only getting to know these characters myself, but having them get to know each other, and then like investing in these gambits and going out of my way to, raise them all a specific way to build them up to this specific class. Like I want those decisions to feel like they matter. And the only way they're going to feel like they matter is if the game pushes back enough that I have to like use what I've invested in, right? It's like I put my money down in this way. Was that a good way to put my money down? And it's just on normal. I don't, it's not that it isn't there at all. It is a little bit, but I think it's frustrating because like sometimes with games, I wish you could know when you have the difficulty option, like what's this gonna feel like, and you could get a sense of it within like a half hour and then make a decision to go one way or the other.
Yeah.
Because it was like, well, is hard going to be like I'm trying to master these systems while I'm learning them, and it's going to be too much? Like, is it going to demand too much before I even know what's going on?
That'll be Lunatic for sure, because like Lunatic's obviously a classic mode, and that's one thing they've already confirmed with the DLC is we are getting Lunatic, and I think that's going to be a free update.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Like the fact that they're adding that is great.
Yeah.
But I understand completely, just based on what you're saying, why they kept it out of the base game and why they're like, we're going to wait a couple months because people need to understand the mechanics of this before we throw them into Lunatic.
But even when you use past experience, it can be a little bit misleading because like Echoes, I consider it to be much harder on normal than Three Houses is.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And then like Fates is a weird thing where Birthright is like super easy,
right.
But then you have Conquest, which is obviously substantially more difficult.
That poison pot mission still gives me nightmares.
It's like when you're trying to make that decision in Three Houses, it's hard to know which what you're gonna get.
Yeah,
and I think that is a little bit frustrating.
That's a very good point. It's very hard to judge the past. Even the older games, like Radiant Dawn on normal, is like harder than most any Fire Emblem game out there.
Yeah. Sure,
like, it approaches like Lunatic on just normal difficulty, and then it has a harder one on top of that.
Yeah.
But like so, here's the thing. Like for me, the reason I like the pushback, like I want more pushback in a Fire Emblem game to make me restart, is because I think for someone like me, this is the argument for why I like difficulty in a strategy game like Fire Emblem, is because this type of hard pushback from enemy units punishing you for the simplest miscalculation, like going one square too far and not accounting for like all the enemies, it trained me to be better at situational awareness. Like it taught me to pay attention to more of the systems, taught me to pay more attention to the initial lineup, where I position my units at the start. Who do I send out into like what groups? Like, can they link together and do something to counter this? And it's kind of like a puzzle. It felt like battles were a puzzle to be solved. Right. Whereas in this game, even on hard right now, as you said, Roger, the best I got of it was like there's shit moments.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is meant for Divine Pulse. The one where the paralogue with Sothis, where you go out and like on your own and your students show up, and then all the eagles show up and stuff out of nowhere. On normal it was a joke, but then on like hard, I was like, I actually had to restart that one. I was like, I did the wrong thing completely.
Especially because they leave that chest for you right there on the map at the beginning, where you're like, I'm going to send one unit off to get that and bring everyone else down. Then the eagles come in and that person is just screwed.
Yeah, I just forgot it, and like I had to completely change my strategy, and I like that about it. But still, that's not the same as what I'm talking about with the older games. Exactly. I wish they had more of that.
And I have to imagine on some level it is like that for so many people, this is going to be their first Fire Emblem game.
Sure.
And I'm sure that played a huge part in the decision. But something that I really liked about Echoes is there were just moments that felt kind of BS-y, I guess, for lack of a better term, but that was eased by the fact that you had this Divine Pulse mechanic in Echoes, and so it ended up balancing out to be this really good difficulty where you're going to have stuff that happens that's going to frustrate you, but you can shave off some of that frustration by this new mechanic that you added. Whereas in Fire Emblem Three Houses, it's like, we're going to make the game easier, but then keep that mechanic, and so now I feel like they're just kind of canceling each other out, where like on normal, I almost wish you didn't have Divine Pulse.
Yeah.
I think that would have made it a better experience. Like, I'm not sure why it's there or why it's needed.
Do you think Lunatic's going to cut it completely? Because that's my guess. I feel like Lunatic is going to be... I think it's going to be hard mode without Divine Pulse.
They'll probably keep it in just because, as I said, like it's something you don't have to use. There's no, like, again, Nintendo doesn't have achievements or anything like that, so there's not really a push for that. But I mean, it could also be a creator intent. Like, we want this to be the hardest experience. It's only you can only play it on Classic, and also no Divine Pulse on this, or maybe one use per like entire month or something.
Exactly.
Question about Divine Pulse, because in my testing as I was playing through it seemed to be this way, but like if somebody like crits you and you Divine Pulse and then you get back into the same interaction,
they'll still crit you.
They will still crit you. Yes. Okay.
It's determined at a certain point. You can backtrack to a certain point before a turn, and it will undo that because
if
you
go back 3 turns, they won't. But if you go back 1, and
if you go back to the same spot, it will always be. I believe
Gotcha.
it's always the same outcome. But if you go back to like the start of your turn or the enemy turn, it can replay differently.
Exactly.
I've seen that. I think I tried to test that. RNG might have just been nice to me and made me think that way.
I was playing it live on stream, and I had people telling me, like, no, don't do this. It's going to crit you again.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But, I mean, all this, I think, is more in the name of making the games more accessible. I think it's been the biggest feedback. Even, like, the menu navigation's a little bit better in this game. I feel like. I know it wasn't the first game to use the wheel, but, like, I love that wheel at the beginning of a fight. Like, having
the UI.
Because it used to be in older games, there's a big... I forgot to change out someone's inventory. Got to back out to, like, the encampment menu. This one, it's nice. I think it makes things take one less step. I think one of the only small quality of life improvements I'd like to see is when you're in any menu you're in, like especially inventory, and you see like, oh, my sword's down to like 5 hits. I wish I could just hit menu button and be repair. I don't backing out to the blacksmith and having to do it that way. I wish it was an all-in-one menu like that. That's like my only small little gripe about that.
Yeah, it definitely gets to a point, I think, when you're managing like your convoy and every single person's inventory, it feels like there's some sort of system that could be smoother. Even something like you go and like somebody gets something. I almost wish like, hey, at the end of a mission, all these characters picked up these things. Like, do you want to move those around before we move on?
Yeah.
Something like that would help, because you run into situations where you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that this character has this thing, and now that needs to be over here. And so I do think the process of shuffling those items around could be smoother.
I just have a question, because I just realized up to this point, I actually don't know, and maybe one of you guys have noticed this in the playthrough. You know how Awakening and Fates had the auto-equip thing when you were going into like managing your units? You can click like auto-equip and you can just give like the best weapons or optimize.
I don't think that exists.
I don't think Optimize exists.
No,
in this.
I think
and
it
that's
looks
why take that away. That's like that should absolutely have been there.
And not just like in Fire Emblem, right? Like it's in everything. Like Optimize,
But I'm pretty sure Optimize has been in Awakening. In fact, I know it was in Awakening.
To be honest, I don't remember.
But I don't think it's in 300.
I don't know.
It seems like something that should be.
Maybe the logic behind it was like, because there's different goals and stuff. Maybe the logic behind it's a little bit more difficult to implement. Because if you're trying to train someone like, I gave them a training axe because I want them to level up their axe thing, but they need to do best. Like, no, they're a sword person now. Give them all the swords. Like.
But that would
undo option.
But I mean, if they had Optimize, I'm imagining, right, if you want somebody who's normally an axe wielder to have a sword this time, you can click Optimize. It'll give them all the best axes. But then individually, if you just click Optimize for them, you can go in and be like, I'm going to give this sword to this person, and that would greatly decrease the time you're spending in inventory.
Pretty sure it's not in there because I was looking for it specifically just to see. But because I do spend a lot of time in inventory management before fights, and I think a lot of people do. Yeah. And anything they could do to help speed that up just a little bit, like even your idea, just like alerts is telling you, hey, remember that, because at least you have the luxury now to back out and do that, because it's, again, as I said, in older games, you were screwed. You got to reload your save, and that takes how long, you know?
I'm gonna throw something out there. In any RPG, the items that you get that exist solely for being sold at a shop are really dumb.
Oh, yes.
I think we've moved beyond that
just
point.
Need to be like, sell it now.
Auto sell bullion,
If you're just going to give me money... If this is just going to be money at the end of the day, having to go through the extra step of being like, let me go to the dude, and then, there it is, and then sell it, and then get the money. Yeah. That's a little weird to me.
It's always nice every few months you go back, oh, look, I have a large bullet.
Right.
Sitting there. How nice is that?
Yeah.
I do think this game was a little bit more generous in terms of its economy. Older Fire Emblem games felt like a nightmare. Like you were always fighting against the economy. Like you never had enough money till like late game, and even then you had to be very picky with what you buy. Whereas in this game, even on like my hard difficulty playthrough right now, I feel like I'm just rolling in the money.
Yeah, you got like silver bows on everybody.
It's just like this isn't a problem. So I kind of appreciate that though. I think it was a little too tuned, a little too difficult in terms of the economy before. But the one area I'm kind of disappointed in. Like, I like a lot of the changes in combat. I also want to praise the magic system change. Best change I've ever done. Yes. Hated having to go find new magic books. I love that. But the one thing that was probably the biggest disappointment for me, despite loving so much about the combat of this game, are the battlefields themselves and their variety, and in my opinion, the kind of lack of variety compared to what has been done in previous games.
Right. This one was, as I was writing the review, this one was difficult for me because, like, I that was my initial gut reaction where I was like, the variety could have been better, but then I thought about it and I was like, well, no, you did have this mechanic and you did have this battlefield that was a little bit different. And then especially comparing it to Echoes, where I thought that was like easily the weakest aspect of that game was how little variety there was from encounter to encounter. And so I think that comparison definitely made it look a lot better in my eyes.
No, go ahead.
It's not bad. No, it's pretty good. And it sounds like, and what you said, it's an improvement. I think in terms of like the visuals of the different environments, yes, they like have lots of different looking locales. It's more about like the traps, the environmental hazards, the size of stuff. Going back to some of the older games, they just had so many more things you had to account for, and they only throw so many at you. And for example, I know they have like sand. They have a sand level where heavier mounted units and cavalry units are not going to be able to travel as far. They have, the lava level where you can't stand on lava.
That mission's awesome.
They have like one or two things you have to account for. They do have like people in like those things, those little launching machines, whatever they are, invited them where you stand them, it says arms, and you can launch something out there. They do have stuff like that, but it never approaches like one simple thing. That was even, I think it was in Awakening, and it's been in all the previous games that were like the 3D games. The fact that like if you had an archer on a higher ground,
Right.
it gave a boost to their stats over someone on a lower ground.
right,
Like you don't have to count for anything like that. Even like the town, the village level, that you sometimes go that map. It tries to make it feel a little bit more claustrophobic, like you're going through like back alleys and stuff, but it still feels way too open. I'm thinking back to like Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn and some parts of Awakening. They were really claustrophobic on purpose because they wanted you, each movement mattered.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the whole puzzle feeling, and none of these battlefields, it was another part of that problem for me, Ben.
Yeah, I agree with you, I think. I think when we're talking about Three Houses, it felt like there were mechanics within a map, but they were just things to deal with rather than I think what you're talking about, where it's like, no, the design of this map is going to feel different than anything else you do. There's not just going to be things to deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
It is like the whole mission is you have to deal with it. Like you have to go through this like castle and everything is really, really narrow. And so how you do every single encounter is going to be different. Not just like these encounters in like this corner of the map or something. Yeah,
That's
I
where
get what you're
Conquest
saying.
excelled, I think,
Sure.
right? I think that's like the one really good thing about Conquest, not with Birthright, but Conquest, is that there were traps in every mission. There were like, you're going through these temples where there's just one small corridor, and so much so to the point that when I started playing Three Houses, one of the earliest missions on all of our routes is the Death Knight one, the very first Death Knight one where we're standing there, and they mention to you like, oh, those tiles are magical, like what's going on with those tiles?
Yes.
I have, on my very first playthrough on hard classic, avoided all those tiles, not realizing they were boost tiles. I thought they're traps. So I'm like, I have to go the other way around. I have to fight the Death Knight. I got to do this thing. When in reality, you stand on those tiles, you could cheese your way through the whole mission on both flanks.
So-
it's trying to teach you, like, no, you can go the flank route as opposed to just going
Did you
straight on.
not realize you can mouse over them or
At
cursor
all.
over them and see the
And
text
see
at
what
the
the thing was.
top?
I assume that's a trap. I played Conquest. I'm not doing that.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I think that mission kind of exemplifies what Damiani is talking about, where I was like, oh, okay, like there's different routes that you can go, and you can like teleport, and it's just like they don't really. It just sort of feels like it's there. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like the mission is relying on it in any interesting way. Where I felt like I ignored a lot of that and did the mission just fine. Where instead of the mission design being like, no, we're really going to change up how you think about movement.
I was so excited when I saw that level. The teleporters, like, finally, here we go.
Yeah.
They were just, train wheels are coming off. And then, I had the same experience, but I was like, none of this was really, wow.
Right.
They didn't implement this very well.
Especially
And
because
it-
all the teleporters eventually go to the same place.
Yeah.
I was really worried, like, oh, maybe this character's going to be trapped there. It's like, oh, no, both of these just go right to that middle area. It's just either side.
I just want to give shout outs. Like, this a simple example of what I was looking for. In Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, there's this notoriously infamous mission just called, like, it's a bridge. It's a horizontal bridge. You just got to get to the other side of the commander. But what it does is they have ballistas that are firing at you, so you have to avoid, and they keep alternating where they're shooting.
Yeah.
So you got to avoid spots every turn. On top of that, you can't tell, but they've dug out the ground from a lot of the tiles on the bridge. So if you step onto it, you get sunk in it and you lose, like, you're immobile for a turn.
Oh.
And if you're in that firing path, it does like an extra buff on top of that, like it's gonna do more damage.
Yeah.
And then towards the middle of the bridge, they put up pillars, so it gets really narrow, and you gotta like kind of snake around them and stuff, while also the firing is
Yeah.
on. And it's this really small bridge,
Yeah.
and it's like, this should be quick. That mission takes like upwards of an hour sometimes because it's slow, very procedural, but very strategic.
Yeah.
And it was, I love that level. Like, it's a great level. And once you get to the end, you feel like you've accomplished so much.
Absolutely.
And then in this game, in Three Houses, I don't feel like I felt that, except for like maybe even a few of the later levels,
Yeah.
just because they're throwing an onslaught of enemies at you. It was always onslaught of enemies.
The later levels and like just the tiles where like your cavalry would have a really hard time
Yes.
moving through. I loved that.
Oh, yeah.
But it felt like it was coming at the very end of the game.
Yeah.
And I think even just like, and maybe I missed something, and if I did, let me know. But thinking about Fire Emblem, you hope like there's strong incentive for you to like go out of your way to like maybe talk to this person at this house. Yeah. Like you don't really get that. There's not really.
There's some of that, but it's only really with the characters that have relationships with other characters. So like for me, and maybe you're not supposed to do, I'm sure you are because the dialogue tree's there, but like with Felix's dad, right? When you're going through the supports, you're like, his dad's kind of a dick. I don't really want to like really hang out with Felix's dad. So during the mission where you kill Roderick in our route, I recruited Felix. Gotcha. So I had Felix kill his father, and his dad's being like, listen, all right, you need to die too, son. I never really liked you in the first place. Like, says all this stuff, and you're like, whoa, buddy. Like, I didn't think you were going to take it that far. So, to me, yeah, I do feel like some of the missions were lacking that, at least with the side characters. When you get to the family missions, you feel it. But, yeah with those side character missions, the village ones, there really isn't a lot of that. The variety thing that you guys were talking about, though, with the levels and the maps, so much of it is relegated to the paralogs. Yeah. And I feel like that should have been main mission stuff. Like, for me, one of the most iconic missions in my playthrough was Mary Ann's paralogue. Oh my God, you're in the fog. She's by herself. You find out that like the one person is from her family crest, and you have all these crazy monsters coming in as you're trying to go through the fog of war. That mission's horrifying, but again, it boils down to what you guys were talking about, which is just it's an onslaught of enemies. Again and again, and you just don't know where they're coming from. Right. And it's tense, but it still comes down to just being an onslaught of enemies. But some of those other paralogs, like the Ingrid one, where Ingrid is gonna get kidnapped by like her suitor, and then Dorothea's like, "You're a strong, independent woman. Like, let's kill that guy." Like, that's great. Like, I think those missions were really good. It was just the ones that came down to like false difficulty.
It's so funny. That one's like reach the escape tiles and you win, and it's a giant open volcano area. So like. For me, Ingrid was a Pegasus Knight at that part.
All the
it
way
was like,
down the side.
I was like, in previous games, it was like, there are a lot of stuff obstructing your way. You can't just run right there. You have to earn it. And I'm like, I think they missed the point of this. So I was like, or maybe they should have forced you to not be a Pegasus Knight at that point or something. I don't know.
I will say, though, that I feel like I had moments like that with my flying units where you got to bypass so much, but that felt like a reward for raising the student this way.
To a Pegasus Knight,
which also felt really good.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I like having that option where it's like, okay, it's not a story thing, but just mechanically, this thing is much easier for me to do because I invested in this.
I love, to me, mountain units flying and this cavalry units, so OP for me.
Oh, yeah.
So especially, I don't know if this was in any of the, I haven't played the two most recent ones. I forget if it was in Awakening, but just the option to dismount.
Oh, yeah.
So going as a Pegasus Knight, there's a bunch of archers here. Dismount. Kill you all. Mount back up. Yeah. I was like, okay, you're going to have to really up the AI here or something because... But it felt like a reward. Sure. It felt like, okay, I put so much I knew on my second playthrough to get these units. Okay, they just reaffirmed this. And it felt like it was a payoff. But at the same time, some of those other games have even hazards that no matter how powerful you get, there's always something that each path had some kind of counter to certain like overpowered units. So that would force you to maybe go a different way or come up with a different strategy.
So much of that, though, was relegated to the weapon triangle, which is still here, but I feel like it's been taken down a couple notches, right? Yeah, it's not as important anymore.
Yeah, it's not a wall in the way that it was. Yeah, right. And man, a sense that I have had in the past with Fire Emblem that I would love to see more of in Three Houses is just like being pulled in multiple directions at the same time in a map, where it's like, okay, there are multiple things going on, and I want to do both of them, but it's hard, and how am I going to split up my army to deal with these two things? I just... Like there are different forces at different points, and especially at the final mission, I feel you do definitely get that. But I just wanted more of the final mission, I think is what I'm trying to say.
The only mission I'm even thinking of prior to the time skip that has a lot of that is like the second Mach battle.
Yeah.
When you're actually doing like the Mach War of the Lions and the Eagles or whatever, and then you're going through and you're trying to fight the other houses. Yeah. That's really the only time up to that point where I was like, I have to split up this unit here and go over here. Otherwise, I just sort of charged in with everybody and then made sure nobody died.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to older. Yeah, there's been times where it's like, hey, there's this like powerful boss over here. You can go fight, but there's also a character who's isolated, needs to be rescued, and on your first playthrough, you're probably not doing both. So like, you get to rescue a person, and like, ha ha ha, too many turns have passed. I'm fleeing now, and they had like some super rare blade or something. It's like, shit, I wanted that. Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned that though, super rare weapons and blades and things. I'm curious how you guys felt about this, because to me, I recruited certain characters knowing they were going to have really good swords, and then never used them again. Sorry, Catherine, but like Catherine has this awesome sword. You get all the paralog stuff done. You have this amazing sword with Catherine, and I just never used her. I gave her sword to somebody else, and I did that with a lot of characters, like Ingrid's spear you get from her paralog and things like that.
See, some people are gonna think this is sacrilege, but in my initial playthrough with the Black Eagles, I got to a point where I was like, I don't need anyone else. I just need the Black Eagles. And then I had a moment. I recruited somebody. I don't even remember her name. I recruited somebody else. Just like, she was a mage, and because the Black Eagles are so mage focused, I just didn't need her. And so I wouldn't deploy her. And so I had this one other character from this other house, but I didn't need her. And it was just like this Black Eagle army the whole way. And I feel like I missed out on a lot, obviously, with the interactions between houses, and you get that mixed up stuff. But I also love that, I don't know, I focus so heavily on them. I think what I was concerned is...
It's a little OP, honestly, especially when Dorothea's pulling Thanos and, like, dropping meteors from across the map.
Yeah.
Like,
that was actually played into my decision, where I was like, the bigger my pool gets, the harder it's going to be to train all of them. And so if I have a relatively small... I can only deploy so many units anyway, and if I'm not going to have anybody die, like, why not just keep a relatively small pool and then just invest in them?
Right.
But, yeah, you do. You become so friggin'
powerful. On my first playthrough, I didn't get to recruit everybody, but I did actually spend a lot of time leveling up everyone. I had the A squad, but then I took them all out and put in other characters and then forced them to level up so that they all almost all the characters I had were able to hit master class by the end. Whereas on my hard playthrough right now, I'm definitely sticking to just the blue lions, and all the weapons that I'm getting, those paralog weapons, I'm giving to whoever, either if they're from the blue lions, you get to keep it. So Ingrid gets to keep hers, the lance, but the other ones are going to anyone who is a primary blue lion, and I'm just power leveling them, just like I know who I'm focusing on this time. I don't need to build everybody up.
Everybody for me, just
it gets to a point where it's just ridiculous.
It's funny though, because even though you're saying, oh, you stuck with that one house, if you like look on those little loading screens where it says the rankings of the characters, during that first couple days, it was pretty mixed. It was like, oh yeah, most used units like Claude and Lysithea, but then also Dorothea, whatever. You log on now, and it's literally nothing but Black Eagles characters.
So
like it's the entire Black Eagles
That's actually what it was like for me. When I was reviewing it.
Oh, probably because everyone wants to play Edelgard.
No, it was from the beginning of the review process to the end. It was like all Black Eagles.
That's it.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Oh man, they're great though. I mean, those characters, it's a testament, I think, to how great the Black Eagle class is. Not to like toot our own horns or anything that we chose the right class, but and not to say there even is, because I feel like I love the stories in all of them, but I do feel like so many of those characters are very unlike, like I think every class sort of has their own archetype, right? Every class has like a Ferdinand Lorenz kind of noble character. Every class sort of has that like shy girl. You got like Marianne or you got Bernie or whatever, but characters like Hubert, again, like the ride or dies, like just the overall creeps. Caspar, who's just this like nutty wild child, is like, I'm gonna just attack whatever you want. You want to train today? Let's go, boss. There's a little bit of that with Raphael, but I do feel like they're very pronounced in the Black Eagle class, whereas the other ones are a little bit more malleable.
So it's something that's so fascinating about Edelgard and Hubert, where I feel like most fantasy that I consume is unable to, or that I've consumed, I should say, there's obviously a subjective opinion here, but like is able to make a character like Edelgard that is just so like adamant and like vicious in the pursuit of their goals. Like, but makes them so sympathetic and understandable and relatable in their own way. Like, it almost felt like some sort of consolation prize for what ended up happening to Daenerys in Game of Thrones, where it was like
a little bit.
This is what Daenerys was supposed to be.
I heard about that when I was like,
I mean, well, let's see. She has silver hair, right? She was, treated badly as a child.
Right.
Eventually goes crazy and obliterates everybody. Like, there's a lot of parallels there. So
it's just what I'm trying. I guess what I'm trying to say is I felt in season 8 of Game of Thrones, I felt like they had to compromise that character to get to where they wanted to go, whereas Edelgard, in my experience with the character, didn't feel compromised for the story, for the sake of the story.
Talking about characters and their relationships here.
Yeah.
There's one area we haven't touched yet.
Oh.
I know people are going to want to know, and they'll probably want to know the answer from all of us.
Yeah.
We're talking about relationships and marriage.
Of course.
Yeah.
Who'd you end up with by the end of this game?
You know.
Yeah.
You already know.
I already know.
Wait, who'd you end up with?
Edelgard.
Oh, yeah, me too. All right, I was concerned for a minute. I'm like, wait, who do you mean already know?
But let me just say.
Also, no. I don't believe he truly loves Edelgard the way you're supposed to love Edelgard. Because you call her Edelgard, you're supposed to call her Elle.
No.
She wants you to call. You're one of only a few people in her life. She trusts to call by a nickname. You got to say, I got married to Elle.
No, I refuse.
You have to say Edelgard von Hesse.
I only say Elle when we're alone.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But I did end up with Edelgard, but I just want to say, other equally strong candidates.
Let's go.
Other equally strong candidates.
That's what I'm here for.
Bernadetta,
Yes.
equally strong.
Well, okay, time out. Because Bernie, to me, this is something we didn't really touch on.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yes, to me, this is something we didn't really touch on in this discussion, but when I was here a couple months ago and we were talking about our excitement for the game, one thing that brought up like an area of concern is that you're a professor and they're students, and there is sort of like this level of, you got a level of power over them.
Yep.
Bernie is the only character of the whole Black Eagles, because Dorothea is super hot and she like knows what she wants. You got Petra who's like, I'm not from this country, but you can teach me. And then you've got Bernie who's like, I don't really know like who I want to hang out with. And so the whole time I was playing, I'm like, Bernie, you are my little sister. I'm going to protect you at all costs. I love Bernie. But I had to set her up with the student.
I am in 100% agreement. I think it would feel a little bit weird.
Good.
I think what I was trying to express there was that I just loved her character.
Oh, yeah.
So when I'm saying,
of
I think when you say that you get married to a character, like you get married to Edelgard, to me that is saying like, forget all the waifu bullshit. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I think the writing of this character was so strong that I feel really attached to him.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying about Bernadetta.
Okay, fair enough.
That whole Bernadetta thing goes completely out the door for Dorothea.
Oh, Dorothy!
Dorothy is amazing.
She's a woman who knows what she wants.
Yes.
I love her.
Yes.
Yeah, she's great.
Obviously, of course, I don't think we spent enough time talking about Petra. Because
Petra's
amazing.
Yeah, Petra's amazing. Manuela was one of the first ones where, like, out the gate, she's like, well, Professor, if you want alone time with me, like, we can arrange that. Every one of her support conversations, she is just thirsty. She's like, who's going to drink with me and hang out tonight? And it's like, well, and the thing was, and I know where you're going to go with this too, is she seems very one note until you do, I don't know if you guys did Ferdinand and Manuela's support conversations.
No, I did not.
One of the sweetest lines of support conversations in the whole game, because Ferdinand is like obsessed with her. He has a huge crush on her. He's like, I used to go to the opera when I was a kid and I fell in love with you. You're amazing, my princess. And she's like, maybe you dial down the princess thing a little bit. Like, don't call me. I'm your teacher. Like, don't do that. And then you get to the second one. She's kind of like feeling it a little bit. And by the third one, she walks in on him singing her song from the opera. And it is one of the sweetest things in the entire. It's so good. And the thing was, to me, Ferdinand, of all the characters in Black Eagles, kind of seemed like the blandest until the later support conversations. Right. So to get that with Manuela was something I really appreciated. I liked that a lot.
Oh, man. See, I really liked Ferdinand. And I wanted to talk about Lindhart really quick. Because I think there are like a couple of characters. I think Lindhart is a really good example of like, a lot of the characters that we're talking about have like things in their past that they're dealing with or just some sort of growth that they need to overcome. And Lindhart certainly has that with how he chooses to interact with people. But I don't think it's like quite as like momentous as maybe some of the tragedy that other characters are dealing with. But I also like that. I liked that like, we were talking about like shonen anime, like it's not always this tragic flashback. Right. Like sometimes like Lindhart is just trying to learn how to talk to people in an effective way.
He likes his bed.
Right, he likes his bed, and he's like a very blunt person. He's like trying to realize like, okay, maybe I can't always be that way. Yeah. Like that also feels just as believable and real. And so everybody's pretty fucking fantastic.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
Even from the other houses too, I really like Hilda. And I couldn't recruit her on Black Eagles. It was too late by that point. So I'm doing Blue Lions now, and she was like the first one I invested in. And she's fantastic. Like she's just she's lazy. She's like, I don't really want to fight today. Like, you guys want to fight? I guess you need me because I'm so strong. Whatever. And then she goes and obliterates people. Like, she's fantastic.
Damiani, I have a question for you. You can answer this. You're the Golden Deer guy.
Oh yes.
So I've my new game plus on hard that I'm doing is with Golden Deer, and I don't remember the characters as well as I do the Black Eagles.
Sure.
But there's that girl that like doesn't want to do shit. Like she's pink haired.
That's Hilda.
That's Hilda.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I didn't remember her name. I didn't remember her name because that was my question.
Yeah.
Was like, how does that story end up playing out? Like, how does that character grow?
Yeah, well, I mean, I immediately went against that and turned her into a badass, like
she's
in the field.
Yeah.
But it's funny, over the story, she kept like trying to get like out of it and stuff. But her character arc is basically she has an older brother who's like a war hero,
right?
This legendary fighter, and she basically is just like concerned about him. So even though she's getting other people to do stuff, she wants to get out of battle. She's basically like it's kind of like this tied to her brother being overprotective about her, but also worried about losing him in battle, and she doesn't want to like lose her friends, and she thinks she can't protect anyone because she's being protected by him. But then she kind of like breaks out of that, and she's actually using her stuff to like get people to kind of get out of their own like kind of comfort zones when she's having them do stuff for her. Like she actually encourages Ignatz, the painter kid with glasses, to be more like go with that. She helps Raphael's doing everything for his little sister because they need money. He needs to make it, and like she's holding up her end by trying to run stuff while he's trying to become a knight and finally take care of her. And he doesn't know how to like talk with his sister about like gifts, and Hilda looks at what he's making for a gift and goes, let me help you out with that and stuff. Yeah. And you actually find out she's like, I mean, it might be stereotypical, but she's really into like fashion and like accessories.
Right.
And her ending is she goes and starts a new school for that and becomes like a professor and eventual headmaster of that as well.
Cool.
So like she has like a good trajectory and stuff. I know she appears to be like the anime fan service. In fact, on my playthrough, that's who I married because I wanted to go the full anime fan service. I was like, let's see where this is going. Like, I just want to see where we're going with this. How crazy does it get? And it's like not that bad.
I just gave her an axe and like never looked back. I was like, no, you're gonna. Yeah,
she's flying around with her axe. It's like, you're dead. You're dead. Yeah, she was like OP for everything.
Hilda, too, correct me if I'm wrong, is like one of the only characters I think she is the Golden Deer equivalent of like Dedue and Hubert, where you can't get her in the other routes. The only difference is that you can recruit her early on in our route, but you have to do it in like the 3rd month or something like that. Or like it's in a very specific window. And I kind of wish there was a little bit of that with Dedue and with Hubert, but also when you play through Black Eagles, it's clear. Like,
you understand why not.
And Dedue, same thing. He like, gives up his life and turns into a monster for him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I do want to. So for my thing, the only thing I was disappointed about. So I played as male Byleth in my first playthrough, and my favorite character is Claude.
Oh yeah.
The Golden Deer. I love Claude.
Yeah.
And all of our conversations together, like he felt like he got me the most. I was like, this is like, you are a great character. I really like you. Like, where's your S rank?
Right.
This sucks.
Yeah, sure.
I was so angry.
Claude is the character during that cutscene where Edelgard, it's the ball, and Edelgard and Dimitri are dancing, and you see them like side by side. And then Claude's like chilling in the background having a good time, and he's the one who outstretches his hand to dance with you.
Yeah.
He's the only one in that cutscene. So it does seem weird that he's not an S support and that you can't do like a same-sex marriage with Claude. That should have been in there.
So that, I mean,
I don't understand like making a character like Claude, right? And like, you know that's what people want. How is it not in the game?
He's like the best I could put it is that he definitely has bisexual appeal. Yeah. And I was very surprised they just didn't fully embrace that character.
I think Claude has universal appeal.
Yeah, I mean, he just feels that. I mean, he was the perfect character to be the fact of bisexual. I think Dorothy is the other one. Yeah, they don't do as good of a job with her, but she has some unique conversations.
It's weird with the girls.
They do a fine job with Dorothea.
Yeah, Dorothea.
Okay.
Edelgard, actually. You can marry Edelgard. Yeah, I did. Exactly. You played female violence. Edelgard. Yeah. Mercedes, actually, is another one. Mm-hmm. Whereas, the only option for dudes is Linhardt. And Linhardt's great.
So you can actually marry.
I like Linhardt too, but in comparison to Claude,
right? You should be able to S rank with Claude.
Yeah, the problem. I forget what we talked about. Oh, we talked about this in the last friend code. The problems of the marriage options for the gay and lesbian options. Alois and Gilbert are the only 2 options for male S rank. We don't actually marry either of them technically. And with Alois, depending on some decisions, he makes you end up you will have to marry a female villager anyway because he apparently has a wife and they do a great job with the gay options. I haven't I'm right now I'm playing as female Byleth and I'm gonna marry Dorothy. Dorothea?
Dorothea.
I'm going with her because she's like great. Like I love her attitude towards everybody. I was like, this is a great option here. But like Claude is still nudging me. He's like, hey, I'm now a legit option if you get S rank with me. And I'm like, shit, where's my both options?
I feel like this conversation has had the perfect trajectory where we've like talked about really serious things that we've liked mixed with some criticism, and now it has just completely devolved into marriage
Fanning over people. I know. Well, it's great.
But I mean, on a serious note, though, they have to take a first step somewhere, and just even allowing same-sex marriages as an option.
Yeah.
Good first step.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there's a lot of room to improve.
Absolutely,
and I really hope that next time around that they give more options there.
Yeah.
I think they definitely need to do a better job with it, and I think they need to bring a writer or someone on board who actually comes from a place of experience who's writing these characters so they feel a little bit more natural and they don't come off so much as it's what I imagine a lesbian or gay person would say to stuff, and it's
yeah, I agree with you 100%, but I also think it's a little difficult because, like, yes, you do want it, but you don't want it to be like a Fire Emblem Fate situation where you're like, everybody loves me in a really creepy way that doesn't feel justified, right? And so you don't want it to feel like it's just happening because, like, oh, we know what you want, we're gonna get you there. Like, you want that option to be available. And if there's no reason why it shouldn't happen, then that's really weird. But you also don't want it to be so forced that, like, the process of getting to know them and to marry them, like, feels so artificial and forced and fake. Like, you don't want that either. Right. And so, you have to, like, I would be okay, I guess, if it's like, okay, no, we can't get married, but here's, like, this great reason why, like, not because of obviously homosexuality, but like maybe there's something that happens throughout the story between these two characters that separates them tragically, but it's still bittersweet. Yeah, I don't know. There could be some sort of reason, but it feels like what we're talking about with Claude. There's no reason why it
is the
can't
one that doesn't
happen.
make sense. Yeah.
I mean, but it's a fictional character too, so like he doesn't have his own authority to say like, oh, that is how I am. Like, sorry, you misread me and stuff. But at the same time, I think like I saw some complaints about like no matter what gender your player avatar is, some of the conversations will play at the same. That's not entirely true. Like Sylvain, ladies man guy, will definitely be a little bit more flirty with you when you're a female,
for sure.
But at the same time, I think they could go. It might help them be able to figure out how to better craft these opportunities, like not make it forced, but make it feel a little bit more natural if you choose to pursue it. Is at the beginning of the game, since you're playing a player avatar, it's just like maybe they have a preference thing that you pick because there's so many. You just pick a gender and that's it. There's like no customization beyond that. Just say, hey, I would like in this playthrough, I'd like to be bisexual or I'd like to be gay. I'd be whatever within the realm that they want to do for that. Just pick it and they're like, okay, now we know. Like now, like it's good. This experience can be a little bit more tailored to you for that. I think they could go a long way towards helping that, but at the same time, I do feel like the writing also isn't there for what they're doing. But it could also be a byproduct of what I just explained. Like they don't know what to like. They have to account for every situation, and the best way was just be generic.
I think it's especially frustrating, kind of going back to our concerns with Byleth, right? Especially somebody that you can pick to be as either male or female, right? Who is such a blank slate, who doesn't really have much to say. Like when it's so limited as it is, it's even more frustrating when there's not this super well defined character anyway. So why are you placing these restrictions when it could be more open ended based on who I'm controlling? Yeah.
I mean, there'll be more games. We'll see what they do from that. But like I know there were definitely criticisms about it, and they're definitely fair criticisms. We'll see where we go from here. One last thing I want to say about relationships and marriage in this game, the one small disappointment. And it actually would have been a great workaround to the whole kind of like iffy subject of you being a professor and some of the marriage options where your students, even if they are of age by the end, they still call you professor in the end. There wasn't so much about matchmaking in this game in terms of like getting other people to marry each other, which has been a staple of the older game, like we called waifu stuff. It's like they had a reason for it. Characters can still end up marrying each other in the epilogue, but you don't have so much control over it where you can guarantee it. To my knowledge, I think if you hit an A rank, it's eligible for it. It just depends on other decisions.
You mentioned that, and my brain immediately went to the DLC again.
Yeah,
I feel like maybe that's going to be kids because they did that in Awakening and they did that in Fates. I could maybe see them doing another time skip and having children for some of the.
Man, I really hope not because
children.
I feel like with the support conversations, once you get them to that A rank level. You do get some of that where you get some confession of feelings. So the curtain peels back a little bit. But at the same time, I also liked that it wasn't so consumed about this, especially from the Black Eagles perspective, because it was like, no, man, we got a job to do. We are fighting this war. That is like Forget everything else. Forget these this whole other bad guy faction. We'll worry about them in the DLC.
Right.
We are taking down the church. Every waking second, we're thinking about this mission, especially post time skip, right? And how focused they are. Where it was like that makes sense. I like that focus. Even when you're just students and you're training to fight in this war, you're trained to fight greater things ahead. I like that it is focused on the task at hand, and you do have the relationship stuff, but it's not so consuming as to take away from their mission, I guess.
Yeah. Part of the reason I love keeping characters alive to the end, my motivation, is because I like to see where they end up. Of
course.
Right.
And so some of the epilogues for me were disappointing. Like Manuela's, if she doesn't marry anyone, they make it a point in her epilogue to say, and her last sentence is like, and she remained unmarried for the rest of her life. I'm like,
oh,
wow,
man,
okay.
That's
Like you really we have to go there. Whereas
There's
I think
nothing wrong with that.
I know, but
the way they play it off, though, I get what you're talking about. It does feel like
it's
especially because of her support conversations.
Yes.
That's the biggest deal in her life. And she's like, I cannot.
It's like her biggest fear,
Sure.
and she's like resolved that it's gonna happen. And I
then
guess
it
like
happens,
they're
I guess.
confirming it, but it's like there's the only way to alter that course is if you end up marrying her.
Yeah.
That's the option. But like, I guess there could be a balance. I guess up to
Manuela DLC. This solves all of the problems that we've talked about.
Right, exactly.
You can straight up say, I'm not going to get anyone to S rank marriages. I don't care about this because there's a war, and like the A rank is satisfying enough.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that I feel like a little bit of it for me was missing. I didn't have to go full blown. Everyone can marry everybody. But just a little bit more authority, even over my own house. Even if it's just my own house students, no, like having some impact on their ultimate fate. You do, but even more impact on it.
I get what you're saying, and I think that's a really good point, Damiani, because Byleth and Edelgard, it felt like, okay, we accomplished this task. We went through all these great pains together. Now, what does the future hold? And just kind of like this optimistic tone, kind of like this reward for seeing it through to the end. I get what you're saying and wanting that for more characters, where it makes sense, where like eventually you do reach a point where you overcome whatever faction you're fighting, and you want there to be a future for these characters together.
Yeah. I don't need the children part of it.
No,
I don't need that much.
No.
That's a little overblown.
I totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of curious, is there anything we haven't covered that you still want to dive into? Otherwise, we have some questions we can get to, but I feel like there's some stuff still left on the table.
There is something that I want to bring up during my playthrough where I was like, this feels lame. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can give
this.
contradictory information. But the whole online integration thing felt completely worthless to me. And what I mean is like the people that are in your monastery selling stuff and then like playing hide and seek with them.
Oh yeah, I literally never did that once. Not once.
Tried it once and I was like, what is this? Done.
Yeah.
It just like whatever time they spent doing that, I wish could have been spent on anything else. Like it doesn't really take away from the game, but it doesn't add anything.
Need it. I mean, you think about. I think the way it was integrated was fine for a primarily single player experience, right? You like having and you could turn it off. You don't even have to have it as an option.
Yeah.
Where it's like 98% of people chose to explore today.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
I completely agree.
Visitors,
you did not need the visitor thing.
Right.
And like I said, I never used it.
Right,
once.
you look at it, and I do think like first impressions with this stuff is important, and you go up and you see what they're selling, and it's like, cool, I don't need a fucking iron sword piece.
Oh, you got really trashy stuff.
Well,
so,
and it was also the review process.
At that point.
Sure,
so for now, where it's at now, I used it in both playthroughs so far. I buy master seals off of them because they usually have master seals and the rare gem stuff for where you get like a rusty something, but some of them are like. One of them is like the legendary thing, like the lance called like Gordavius or something. Yeah. But you need 10 like adamantites or something, and they're super rare. But one of those local people every month might be selling one or two of those. I'm like, I've been using it to buy rare items as well as the extra vendors that show up in the vendor circle. You can get the Dark Arts one and Anna. Like all that stuff was like, both the online stuff became useful for like trying to lead into like dominating the end game of the especially on the harder difficulty. I'm finding it more useful. But in terms of like activity and stuff, I don't know what the hell they were trying to do with that. It just doesn't do anything for me.
It felt like
and sending you out. Like,
it felt like some sort of concession to me, where it was like, okay, we want more online integration, but it just felt so light that it didn't really have a huge impact on me.
Yeah, you know what they've tried in the past? They've tried asynchronous multiplayer where you send your squad out and you can fight their AI controlled version of their squad, which whatever. One of the games,
it seems like they really want to crack this online nut, but they keep trying different things, but like none of them.
I forget if it was Shadow Dragon or if it was Valkyria Chronicles 2. Am I getting these total games? One of them did legitimate online player versus player multiplayer, Fog of War style maps. So you could take your team versus, I think it was Valkyria Chronicles 2, but they never tried to go do it again. But it literally could translate into Fire Emblem. Like Fog of War, send your squads. I feel like the balance is a whole thing they don't want to deal with. Like that's a whole other can of worms.
That's weird though, because I love Advance Wars too. I'm a huge fan of literally Nintendo strategy games are my lifeblood. I love it. And so the online in Advance Wars for DS was freaking rad. It was so good. And you had that stuff with the Fog of War and you could adjust and play against your friends. And so I think it's possible for Fire Emblem, but I think it would be so much of an ask for something that's primarily single player that they just don't want to bother with it. Which, I mean, that's not really even fair to say, I really, really want this. It's mostly a single player game. I'm just saying I agree with you. I would want it. I would love to have some type of actual multiplayer beyond just having your automatic units from My Castle, like from Fates or Awakening or whatever go up against the
solution. My dream, especially in the narrative of something like Three Houses, is almost like a World of Warcraft Horde Alliance type of thing, where it was listen, man, I chose the Black Eagles.
We're going
this
Black
is our
Eagles.
goal,
I love that.
And you are fighting for resources or territory against the kingdom and the alliance.
Meta game like that.
That to me, because you can still keep everything that you've, and I guess it gets a little bit complicated when it comes to recruiting people from other houses, but I still think the idea is sound, where it's okay, these are all. It's almost kind of like the faction thing in Mortal Kombat 10 or Mortal Kombat X, where it's okay, all these people have joined, this faction.
Sure.
That's going to give them strength. So that'll play into your decision as well as I want to help the Black Eagles or Golden Deer, something like that. Obviously, needs a lot more work than what I've described.
No, but I mean, even on a simpler term than that, I would even say the teams from Pokemon Go, right? Where you have Instinct, Mystic, and I mean, you could do the same kind of thing where it's just this is your banner, right? This is your flag, and maybe throughout the course of your missions, if more people online are playing Black Eagles, you get a boost if you're playing against the other houses. It could be something as simple as that. They don't have to be missions
the identity of it.
Exactly. You don't need the named characters in these missions. You could have them just be factions of the Black Eagles or the Blue Lions or whatever, and they could have a bunch of other random NPC characters you could fight against. You don't necessarily need to have those named characters there. It wouldn't cause that much story issue, I think. But
they should just go the Animal Crossing route.
I can't wait for Animal Crossing.
They should just let you have a customizable room or something, and you could go visit other players' schools, go see their rooms, and then you can interact with their little class. So if I'm Golden Deer, I can go to their classroom, sit in and stuff, just social interaction. Go visit their school, and maybe in the future game. It's not houses you pick, different schools or something. So it's a completely different environment.
Pretty cool.
And you go there, you can actually not only can you see what have you done? Here's an item you can only get in this game. Here we go. The whole there you go, trading and stuff.
All you need,
recruiting
Damiani,
people from other games.
You're onto something. You're so onto something. All you need is to be able to visit somebody else's room, and they just have a chalkboard where you can write whatever you want, and you just go, Black Eagles was here. That's it. People would be so into that.
Nintendo did this at one point. This was called Miiverse.
And
awesome. Miiverse is coming back.
Was Miiverse not awesome?
Okay, why can't Metroid Crawl is admittedly pretty funny, but when you're playing in the middle of a Smash Brothers stage, the Miiverse Smash Bros. Stage in Smash 4, and you see some pretty obscene things in the background while you're playing, and you're trying to focus on the match, but you see weird hentai drawn in the back, maybe not so much, not that. I don't want to walk into somebody's. But
I feel like with Fire Emblem specifically, if you're if you hit that toggle, where you're I'm gonna see what they wrote on my board, you're prepared.
You're prepared.
You're prepared for. internet. I guess.
Of course,
what better way to say that? I don't know.
The memes coming out of this game have been fantastic, by the way. I mean, there's been some
yeah.
really funny, like, meta level stuff of just within the support conversations, or like even the voice actors. Like, some of the voice actors have gone on Twitter. The guy who voices Claude has done this whole golden deer campaign on Twitter, where like if you take pictures in front of things doing the deer sign, that like he'll tweet you things. Or the voice actress for Dorothea, her name's Allegra. She's like tweeting out songs about. It's really funny stuff. And yeah, I highly recommend following the voice actors on Twitter if you're not, because they've been doing a great job. Yeah. Sedith telling stories of, like, you know, the little quest missions that you can do. He's like telling stories of how Flane got lost in the McDonald's play place and you need to go find her. It's just like hysterical things that people have requested that he says. So.
I think that's something that's really endearing about the Fire Emblem community. And you don't get this with every game. Like, there are a lot of games, I think especially like big AAA games, where like you kind of play them. They have like their month, right? You play them, you talk about them, and then they go away, and they kind of just like fizzle from memory. But that's the thing about Fire Emblem is, like, you know, whatever that first house that you picked was, like, you're gonna fight for them until you know you're in a nursing home somewhere. You're probably gonna be getting in conversations about the 3 different houses in a nursing home, and I love that these games create that kind of conversation. Yeah. For sure.
Especially to this extent in this one, because there's 3 of them, right? It was either Birthright or Conquest. And if you played Conquest or you were at all a Fire Emblem fan, you're probably like, you played Birthright, really the super easy one? There wasn't like a lot of conversation. And again, all those classes have these different archetypes that are somewhat similar between all of them, but they are very unique still. You could, you know, get the lazy person or the shy person or the jock person from the other classes, and they still are very different from the other archetypes within your class.
But now you get like that extra layer of like, oh, isn't that just like, you know, the jock person? Then you can be like, you don't understand them, man. Like, you haven't seen.
You haven't lived until you've seen Raphael's support conversations. Right.
Did either of you see the epilogue for Flane? Like her text at the end?
No.
Do you know?
I know she died in mine.
I just want to give you like a little teaser.
Yeah, I think she died in mine too.
A little teaser. In her epilogue,
I'm not sure though.
It travels to present day, and she emerges with Sedith, who's really her father.
Right.
They emerge out into modern day, and she asks, "Can I start calling you father?" And she goes, "We should probably keep this act up a little longer."
Really?
Like what was the Castlevania game, Lords of Shadow style?
Wait. So when you say present day, you
mean like present day, like today?
Just the dialogue.
No.
What? I got a little bit of that with Tokyo Mirage sessions where they were J-pop Fire Emblem
It's either
stars.
like 1,000 years later, like, or modern day. It's like it's in the distant future.
Please make SMT Fire Emblem 2. I beg of you, please.
So if you're looking for the sequel,
as your main character.
For modern day school with Sedith and Flame.
Oh my gosh, I'm all about that.
Fire Emblem with cars and buildings and.
Yes. Did you play SMT?
I did. Yeah, I did.
It's amazing.
Tokyo Mirage Sessions.
Tokyo Mirage Sessions is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's Tokyo Mirage Sessions is the sequel to this.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was curious about that. Anything else?
The music. The music.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
The,
some of it gets repetitive when you hear the same theme over and over again, played in different ways, where it's like the choir singing it and then the piano playing it. But especially those later missions when things get really epic and you're fighting the Immaculate One, you're going up against Dimitri, that's when the music really shifts tonally and it becomes this bombastic, epic orchestral score. And I really appreciated that. Yeah.
I told Roger before we started recording, when you get to the part in the Golden Deer route, there's a post Edelgard stuff where you're fighting Twisted. You go to their shrine, church, whatever.
Yeah.
It is the music there is dubstep.
Really?
There's like a dubstep techno fire.
You said everything that I've heard in that game. That's pretty surprising.
It's like a futuristic looking like Tesla coils and like neon green lights. And stuff.
I'm not against it.
They got mech robots. It's like, oh, okay, interesting. But yeah, like the whole monastery theme was walking around. I kept thinking it sounded like a Breath of the Wild village song. It sounded identical to one. I was like, man, this sounds
a little bit of Terrytown in this. Yeah.
But good music.
Oh yeah, I mean it's stuck in my head. So I walk around my house now going ba da 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 da.
When are we getting that DLC?
I don't know.
So we're getting the first. We're getting the first one in like 2 months, but it's not the story DLC. The story DLC is next April, I think.
Okay.
But there's like 5 different things they're adding. There's like different things.
Okay.
It's sort of like with Xenoblade. You know, Xenoblade had like the cores they added, and then like new difficulties. They're doing that. I think it's going to be paralog stuff, and then they're going to add.
If you could give me something as awesome as Torna for 3 houses.
Torna,
probably the April
I mean this
thing.
genuinely. Torna as a standalone game was probably one of my top 5 favorite games of last year.
It's
I
really
love
good.
Torna. Yeah.
And you want to talk about music?
Oh my
You
god.
want to talk about
Yeah,
music?
no competition there.
Torna's
Definitely
so
no
good.
competition. You want to take a few questions
Yeah.
from our
Sure.
patrons?
I don't even know how long we've been talking.
I could do
So
this for
here,
another
let me
hour.
tell you
I'm
how
good,
long we're
man.
talking.
Fire Emblem's
We
great.
have been talking for exactly 2 hours.
Woo!
So we got a little bit more time on the
Let's
cards,
keep going.
I believe. I think I did 2 hours and 25 minutes. I put
Nice.
on one card, so I think we're still good for we'll do maybe 3 questions here.
Nice.
All right. This first one comes from Straw Hat Ninja. We didn't really talk about this. Greetings, allies, and RogersBase. How did you feel about monster enemies? And
This is actually something I wanted to talk about.
how do you feel about monster
There you go.
enemies in the game? Basically, yeah.
So the idea is really good because they're a great way for you to utilize gambits as well, and the whole how you approach them, how you avoid their attacks. It's all very good. The problem is they're pretty much the same, all of them. They pretty much function the same despite being different monsters or different things that you're fighting. They all kind of feel very similar in a way that I think is a little bit frustrating. And so I think just in terms of design, there could have been more variety there. I'm not sure if you two
No, I agree with that. I agree with that,
Yeah.
The one
That's
thing I
pretty
will
much-
say about the monsters is that, like I said, in the later levels on hard and on classic, some of them do feel a little cheap, and it does feel like, you do need to use the Divine Pulse to take them down.
Sure.
But I will say this, is it wasn't until 40 hours into my playthrough that I realized that you're supposed to break all of the individual squares multiple times and then attack them. So I was just bum rushing in and attacking them with my strongest gambits, everything, and obliterating them. So I was still doing well up until, and this goes, I guess, back to the difficulty thing we were talking about, until I think it was chapter 10 or 11. And then I finally realized oh no, I should be attacking each of the squares individually. And then once it's all open, doing tons and tons of damage and then wiping them out.
And you should also save your most powerful attacks for the opening attack, because if you do 60 damage, it only has 2 health on 1 bar. You're only doing 2 damage. It doesn't count over. You gotta pay attention to that stuff. But yeah, I agree with all of that. Quick one from Joe Miller. I think we all encountered this. It sounded like which student death in part 2 bummed you out the most in your first playthrough?
Student that we had to kill or student that died of our class?
Either or.
Okay. The one that impacted me the most, people are going to get real mad at me, but I'm going to say it right now, was Ignatz. Or Ignatz, how do you say his name? The one from
Ignatz.
Golden Deer. So in mine, he was one of the few students that I didn't recruit on my first playthrough as a Black Eagles person. And what happens is there's the mission where you fight the other girl who's working with Claude. And he's her backup during that mission. I don't know if you remember this at all, or if you were playing on normal and it wasn't super difficult. On hard, this was one of the most brutal things because he had a crazy range and was able to shoot from basically across the map. So when it got to the point where I was struggling with that mission for an hour and I finally got to him, boy, was it satisfying to kill him. And it was real satisfying to hear him squeal at the end. That was great.
Yeah, I don't remember that being... Yeah, it must have
That was
been
super
an
difficult
issue
for me,
on normal. Okay.
But the one of my characters that I really felt the impact of dying was, like I said, Mercedes, because I had recruited her through Blue Lions, took her all the way up to the Dimitri map, the second to last map in our route, and Deju kills her. And it was at that point I had critted Rhea. There was no going back. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't Divine Pulse at this point. I got to follow through. And losing her after investing, I was in the Goddess Tower with her during the ball. I love Mercedes, and so that was a rough one for me.
I guess it wasn't students that died, but I think Dimitri's death was the most frustrating to me throughout my playthrough, because with Claude, I had the choice to exile him. And it was okay, I don't really understand what you're going through, but at least I get to let you live. And with Dimitri, it was just I don't want to do this. I have to do this because this is the path that I'm on, and you die, and I don't really get to appreciate, what you're after or what you're all about. And so that was the most frustrating for me.
Yeah. So here's the thing. But the characters I didn't recruit there's only one character I didn't recruit that I really wanted to recruit. And I found out after the fact that if you had met the recruitment criteria but just forgot, you actually can talk to that character in a battle and still recruit them in the time skip. But that's the only way you can do it, is if you already met the conditions and just straight up forgot to go up and hit recruit. So they apparently do give you an option to still save them in a battle. I didn't hit that with Petra. And when I fought Petra, I was like, I was like trying to avoid her and not kill her. But she ran up and tried to attack like Hilda. I was like, "Oh, you're dead. You're so dead."
That pains me.
And
Petra's
Hilda was
one of
like
my
so OP at
favorites.
that point. I was like, you're not living." Like
Petra isn't one of your favorites. Like, what are you doing?
I know. I was like
Great.
Bernie as well. I was trying to avoid Bernie.
I can't
like,
even imagine.
It was so
killing Bernie.
bad that they
Yeah.
all died, and then like their dialogue, like, "Please go on living." I was like, "No."
Oh.
So
I think
painful.
Petra's above Dorothea.
Oh
right?
no way! No. I would say my ranking is Edelgard,
Yep.
Dorothea, Manuela, Petra. That would be and then 5 would be probably Mercedes.
I think I would put Petra above Dorothea as much as I like Dorothea.
Actually, I take back what I said. I would put Lysithea above Mercedes. Lysithia's story is fantastic,
Oh,
and I want to be.
geez, yeah, she's
Lysithea is one of
messed
the
up
ones that's
one.
hard because with her supports, she was one of the only ones that lived in mine. One of the only ones, and you find out through her supports that she's gonna die really soon.
Yeah.
That she has a shortened lifespan. But there's a way to save her if you remove her crest. And so I was talking to my girlfriend who hooked Lysithea up with Cyril. And it says in theirs that they live a happy life together, but then eventually she goes on and it dies quietly.
Yeah.
And then she tried in her other playthrough, well, I'll hook her up with Felix. And, Felix eating all the sweets, maybe this will be the way to save her. She still dies.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that there has to be one way to save
think
Lysithea.
it's if
It's got to
you-
be your S
I think
support.
it's your
It has
S
to
rank
be.
is the only way
And
you
so,
save her.
During my Blue Lions playthrough right now, I've already recruited Lysithea from Golden Deer, and I should probably save it for Golden Deer, and I still want to do Dorothea, but I feel like Dorothea will be my Golden Deer choice, and I really want to just save Lysithea, and so I'm probably going to marry her. Yeah.
Yeah. Love those characters. Also, like Marianne, her background
Marianne's
kind of
great, too.
mimics Bernie's a little bit.
Yeah.
Very abusive, like
Yeah.
father type
And the
situation.
crest with her
And the
family,
crest.
yeah.
But like her epilogue is basically she's this really shy girl who eventually goes on to be this very powerful speaker and leader.
Oh, cool.
Who rises up like to. I don't think she leads the alliance or becomes like a prominent like a member of like parliament or whatever.
Cool.
And just going from this like shy person who couldn't really express herself to it was almost like a microcosm of the King's Speech, essentially. Like someone who like
yeah.
you know they have it within them and they just need someone to encourage them. And also they got to be trained. Like a lot of their support conversations, like you just got to like practice talking with people
Hilda
more.
does a lot of that with Marianne, because I always have the two of them together as a unit, because Hilda is obviously a monster, and Marianne, if you like have her as the sidecar, just keeps healing nonstop, and so Hilda just like obliterates everybody. And their support conversations are very much that. Hilda's like, "Nah, you're great, Marianne. Like, keep doing what you're doing." And she's like, "Are you sure? Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I'll help you along the way, whatever you want to do." So yeah, I like the two of them.
I looked over the rest. We got a lot of questions, but a lot of the stuff we talked about. A lot of questions about gameplay balance, like how we feel it's too difficulty. Like we already talked about, like how we felt about our endings and stuff like that. So I think I'm sorry if I missed something that was asked. Like I just can't try to skim through them without completely ignoring you two while doing it. It's kind of hard, but I think we covered just about everything, and we've gone really long on this one. This might be our longest spoiler mode.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about with
Yeah.
Three Houses. Can I pose a question, actually?
Yeah,
to
sure.
you?
Yeah, sure.
Because to me, I feel really strongly about this. I haven't felt this strong about a game, I think, honestly, since like Torna last year. There was a lot of stuff I played last year that really impacted me, but for me, a lot of the stuff I was really excited for going into this year sort of underwhelmed me. I'll probably get like all I hate for saying that, but like Kingdom Hearts really was not as fun as I thought it was going to be while I was eventually playing through it. And so for me, Fire Emblem really exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways. And there's stuff we talked about that I'm like, yeah, it could do this better, it could do this better. But to me, like, this is hands down my game of the year right now. And obviously
Nice.
it's early still. It's still summer. Like, there's a lot of stuff coming out. Death Stranding, Astral Chain. There's a lot of really good games still. But to me, I don't know how anything's going to top it. And I was just curious in terms of where you are right now. And again, it's early in the year. Where do you think this lands on like your game of the year list? Like, is it in contention for game of the year? Is it your game of the year right now?
It is. So, I guess the way to frame this was a game I was intensely anticipating.
Yeah.
And so I had very high expectations to it, and it totally satisfied me.
Yeah.
But for me, this has been a pretty fantastic year for
really?
games. Yeah. It doesn't beat Sekiro for me right now.
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't
I guess
beat
Sekiro
it
was
doesn't
this year.
it
Yeah.
doesn't beat Resident Evil 2 for me right now. It doesn't beat Devil May Cry 5 for me right now. But it's really, really, really strong. And the thing is I think my appreciation for it will only go up. Whereas like I've already played some of New Game Plus with the Golden Deer on hard and enjoyed that immensely. And like if I get a chance to go back and continue that, I'm sure that my opinion of it will only go up. That's not saying it's going to beat any of those other games.
Sure, of course not.
But I think I don't know. There was a lot of concern that I saw online with the school setting, and just like visually the look of the game that I saw going into the game. I think there was a little bit of skepticism, and I don't think any of that ended up panning out.
Yeah.
It really did. I was very much looking forward to it. It satisfied me. Not my game of the year, but I don't think that's a slight against it.
No, yeah, of course.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat. It's a game that the more I played, it grows on me.
Yeah.
It definitely has its faults, but I mean, it was trying to do new stuff, and it's just a highly enjoyable game for me. I mean, it didn't exceed my expectations, but it lived up to being a very enjoyable Fire Emblem game, and it is one of my favorite games of the year. But there, I can clearly say more than one title.
Yeah.
Like for me, Resident Evil 2 Remake. I was
RE2 is actually a good one. That's one that
it's really hard for me to
because that came out so early this year that I don't even consider it. But you're right. You're completely right.
My overall, I don't like comparing different games like that. So but I'm judging it by how I felt in my emotional state after I finished Resident Evil 2 was just I was on a whole different plane of feeling high on that game that I haven't approached playing Fire Emblem.
That makes sense.
I mean, this game's made me feel good, but Resident Evil is wow.
Yeah, and obviously completely different genres with different goals.
Sure.
But I do think something like Resident Evil, where I think you can play it on normal, right, and you have a certain experience, and you play it on hardcore, and you have a very different experience. But both of those experiences are kind of magical. You don't feel like you're missing out playing on normal in Resident Evil 2. And I think that is something that's a little bit frustrating with Fire Emblem is getting deep into that normal playthrough and being God damn it, I wish I was playing on hard. That's a frustrating feeling to have. And I do think part of that comes from player experience and the player being able to choose what's right for them. I do think it is partly on the player, but I also think it comes down to design. I think even if something is easy, you can still make it enjoyable.
Yeah.
I think that is something that was frustrating about Three Houses, where it felt like it could have pushed in one way or another a little bit more than it did.
For sure. Any other final thoughts?
No. I was just curious.
Curious? Yeah.
It's good.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I hope. Oh man, I think Fire Emblem Three Houses is a really good game, and there's sometimes when we have this collective of 9 people where certain people will play something and certain allies won't, just because it's not their bag. But I think I do hope more allies get to check out Fire Emblem Three Houses, because I would like to have a nice discussion in Game of the Year.
I
do think it warrants that kind of discussion.
I'd have a call in. I'll defend it.
Yeah. It's always good to get
you can just be there.
Yeah, I'll call in,
Yeah. Getting more, just different points of view on it would be really nice and stuff, just because obviously coming from 3 people who've played previous entries in the series. I know this is definitely aimed at newer entrance to the series. I kind of want to know how it succeeded for them.
Right.
They might have a totally different experience. They might have loved every bit about this.
That's my other thing, right? Is that seeing a lot of the stuff that's on Twitter, and admittedly, I have a bit of a bias because I follow a lot of Nintendo people.
Yeah.
But I do hear from a lot of people who've never played a Fire Emblem game before. They're like, "This game is amazing. What's been going on with this series?" And it shows even in the sales. It's the fastest selling of all the Fire Emblem games already, and it's. I think by nature of having it on Switch and having it as a console game, but also being able to take it on the go, it really worked in its favor. And I do feel like a lot of those support things they pushed in the right direction, where I think they maybe went a little too far with Fates. And again, I think we talked about a lot of the stuff that the difficulty and some of the monsters being kind of samey and some of the maps being a little samey. There are definitely problems with it, but the good, for me at least, heavily outweighs the bad. And I feel that from a lot of people, like I said, who are more mainstream people who haven't played a Fire Emblem game before. And then now are into it and want to go back to play the other ones.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what just exceeded my expectations so much was, it's one thing to, like a character, right? I think there's so many things I play where I'm like, oh, there's something about the way that you look or just... the way that you talk that is likable. But Three Houses goes so far beyond that. And I think so far beyond even what I was hoping it would do with a lot of these characters, with just how tremendously fleshed out they are. And I've said it plenty of times, but I think they really did a good job of making you care in a way that I don't think a lot of other games do as effectively. A lot of other RPGs do as JRPGs do as effectively. So.
Yeah, I really don't. I have a hard time thinking of a game that's quite like Fire Emblem in all respects.
Yeah.
I mean, there are games that are similar in certain respects. Obviously, Advance Wars,
for sure,
same developer and stuff, but like the social system there, not there.
Yeah.
Obviously, like Valkyria Chronicles has like some of the social element, but it doesn't go nearly as deep as this, and it's not turn-based strategy. It's just a very unique.
Well, yeah, you bring up like Valkyria Chronicles, right, where you have like a core cast that is really fantastic and super fleshed out, but you also have a bunch of units that like you're not quite as into, whereas
really matter,
this just feels more uniform.
I agree
like
completely.
they're just basically there is nothing quite like Fire Emblem. There is something quite like Fire Emblem from Sega, and they're just not doing what they did with that series in a certain series called Shining Force that they could be doing this with, but they just don't want to. But besides that point, there really is nothing like this. And that's why I love Fire Emblem so much. And I will keep coming back each time. And I just want to, my final thought on this is just want to say it is fantastic. I know it already had its resurgence with Awakening, the Fire Emblem series. It's not New Heights.
Like another resurgence.
Like this on the heels of the mobile game, on the heels of that, and this
which
is
is genuinely fun. Like I play that every morning.
1-2 whammy of this, bringing it to even higher heights than it's ever been. Coming from a time where I can remember almost 20 years ago, where worrying if a new Fire Emblem game would even come out here after the first GBA one came out. I mean, the first one we got over here, the GBA one, like, will we get any more of these? And then being told with Awakening that this series, the intelligence system is being told by Nintendo, if this one doesn't sell, this series is done. We're not supporting it anymore. And just knocking it out with that, like, I'm glad we're in that timeline, at least for Fire Emblem.
I agree.
Boy, that sounds exactly like Yakuza, where, like, not
that
long ago.
A huge resurgence.
Not that long ago, it was like, man, is this even going to happen? Whereas now it's like, wait, like I wake up and it's like, did I miss 10 Yakuza things that are happening? Like, oh, we're getting this is getting remade. Like, stuff is just happening all the time. So,
I would even say to a lesser extent, Monster Hunter.
Oh.
I mean, like with World literally took things to a whole other level. It's like people, I didn't know anybody else who was playing portable, going through on my PSP. I'm like, oh wait, you also play Monster Hunter? Oh, this is great. And then finally getting into it. And I feel like Try sort of broke it up to a big extent. Like a lot of people who were Wii owners got Try and they were like, oh, this is a lot of fun.
But I mean, just when you talk about scale.
Oh, yeah. I mean, World really blew it out of the water. And now I feel like Monster Hunter is sort of here to stay in the same way Fire Emblem is. But the one thing I want to say is, like, thank you to Sakurai, because literally, I truly believe this. If not for Marth and Roy being in Smash Brothers, we never would have gotten Fire Emblem GBA.
That was my first experience with Fire Emblem.
Same here. Yeah. I think so many people were like, who are these random, like, Japanese sword characters? Yeah. Who are these guys? And now it's literally evolved in such a way where, like you said, this is now a triple A tier Nintendo franchise. People aren't complaining anymore about, oh, there's too many sword characters in Smash Brothers. They're like, where's Edelgard? Is Edelgard in the next Smash? Is Byleth in the next Smash? Like, bring him in. You know what I mean?
I think Edelgard should be in Smash.
I think Edelgard should be in Smash. I'm just saying, alternate costume with the Flame Emperor could be kind of dope.
This is just one man's opinion. If you did that, I wouldn't be upset.
Yeah. Ooh. Or like bring the Professor and then all three of them for the final Smash. Like, oh my gosh. They can do so many things.
You know with Smash Ultimate, where like the whole thing is like, whatever, we just have everyone. We have everyone.
Everyone.
And then you get an update to Ultimate where it's like, every character in Three Houses is in the game.
Oh
everyone.
my God.
That's the next
Gamekeeper is in the game.
That's right. That's right. That's the next challenger pack. It's all Fire Emblem.
Yeah. All everyone.
I think that's going to about wrap it up for this episode of Spoiler Mode. I want to thank every one of you who is a $1 and up patron who made this show possible. As you know, Spoiler Mode is a show we do exclusive for patrons, $1 and up. So if you want to catch any of the other episodes of Spoiler Mode, we have a page on easyallies.com that will take you to all of our patron exclusive shows. You can check those out. But thank you, both of you, for joining me. Do you have any final thing you want to say, Roger, that you've been, like, anything you're working on, anything you want to promote before we head out here?
I mean, go check out my Fire Emblem playthrough. It's a lot of fun. The whole thing is up in its entirety on my YouTube channel. It is a lot of fun watching me go through. And I've even rewatched myself going through some of them just because I was like, what was my emotional state at this point, like comparing it to other things?
Nice.
And they're very long playthroughs. So if you're a fan of long-form content, I mean, some of those streams are like 6 hours long. And again, they're uploaded public in their entirety on my YouTube channel. So if you want to check out my entire, course throughout the Black Eagles route, then check that out. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent stuff. And until next time, everyone, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Both sides of time are revealed to you. What shall you do?